Okay, everybody, I believe we are back. My apologies. We had a power outage here in Laval. Power outage. That's why the stream was cut. For those of you who don't know, in Montreal, we had a ice storm a few days ago, so all the power's been out of whack here in Montreal, Laval. So my apologies again. Maybe double check the sound as usual. Sound should be good. Audio should be good. Everything is green. YouTube is orange, so that means my stream is not super good. Robbie Jeffrey, I'm doing my best here, man. I'm doing my best to sort out this button pushing thing. But this time wasn't my fault. This time was the power of nature. Okay, the power is going in and out throughout the week. It's supposed to be under control now, but as you saw, the power went out again. We've had a lot of people in Montreal and Laval with no power this past week. I luckily had power, and then my power went out for like 4 or 5 hours on Monday. And today, as you guys saw live, it went out for about 15 minutes, maybe even less than that. So my apologies. We were talking about Adesanya and Gastelum. I'm not going to go through a whole review, but like everybody else, I love the fight. I had 2 rounds for Gastelum, 2 rounds for Adesanya going into the 5th. In the 5th round, I gave Adesanya a 10-8, giving him a decisive victory over Gastelum. And we were talking about that epic fight. I also want to talk about the Max Holloway fight, the Poirier fight. And of course, there's so many things that happen. I haven't done a podcast in a while. TJ Dillashaw's positive test with USADA. And of course, bare knuckle boxing as well. Bare knuckle boxing is on the rise. And these are all topics I want to talk about. But before we talk about any other topic, I want to make sure we thoroughly go through the Adesanya Kelvin Gastelum fight. And then talk about the Holloway Poirier fight. 2 epic battles, 2 epic performances back to back on the same night. Incredible night of fights. So, sound and image are clear. Thank you very much. You know that always makes me paranoid. What do we got here about that fight? What about the submission attempt by Israel? That's from Izzy Kelvin. Yes, he had a beautiful triangle attempt. Now listen, Gastelum is a tough guy to submit. Okay, like I've worked with him in practice in the past, and let me tell you something. He is one tough guy to sub. He's got a neck like a bulldog. His neck is unbelievably strong. One of the most strongest necks I've ever grabbed onto in my life. Now, of course, he's a lot bigger than me, and I never actually rolled with him live. We brought him in to help us with George's fight against Johnny Hendricks. Kelvin is a very strong southpaw, obviously, so is Hendricks, but like just grabbing onto his neck as we were drilling, I felt like this kid is so strong. This kid's gonna go far. You know, like back then, he had won the Ultimate Fighter. But he wasn't as popular as he is today. Of course, now everybody in the MMA world knows Kelvin Gastelum very, very well, especially after last Saturday's fight. However, when I had trained with him, he was up and coming, and I was really impressed with his athleticism. And I feel like it would take a world-class jiu-jitsu guy to finish a triangle on Kelvin, unless Kelvin is badly hurt. In that exchange, I found that Adesanya's jiu-jitsu was very impressive. You know, for an MMA fighter, his reactions, he had, Kelvin had shot in on his leg. Adesanya did a beautiful high elbow guillotine. Fantastic. That's the way you're supposed to do it. And he got Kelvin on the bottom. Kelvin had to try to roll out from the pressure of the choke. And as he got on top of Kelvin, Kelvin rolled him over. We call that the bulldozer. When we teach kids when you're turtled up and you roll a guy over, we call it the bulldozer. And Kelvin gets on top, but as soon as Kelvin gets on top, Adesanya starts to work the guard and slaps on a triangle immediately. A beautiful scramble, really. Like for people who love wrestling and jiu-jitsu, that was fantastic scrambling. And that triangle choke was on tight. It was on tight. However, watching that, I was very confident Kelvin will get out because of the angle he had. And Kelvin has no neck. Like Kelvin really has no neck. It's incredible. He's not easy to guillotine. He's not easy to triangle. And that's why I was so impressed by Adesanya's high elbow guillotine, because he put a guy with such a strong, short neck in major trouble. The fact that Kelvin rolled to his back is because he was getting choked. So Adesanya did a phenomenal job with jiu-jitsu. Really, really epic. For MMA guy to get it that right, that well, that clean. Very impressed. I was very impressed. And then the triangle. So I gave that whole exchange, I gave it to Adesanya. Why? Because Adesanya had 2 finishes, 2 attempts. And even though Kelvin had a reversal, he reversed himself into a triangle. So for me, I don't give him much points for that because he went from a bad situation to an even worse situation. And when he got out of the triangle, Adesanya beautifully popped up to his feet. So for me, that was all Adesanya, because Adesanya was on the offense. Adesanya was on the end of the possibility of finishing his opponent. So in my opinion, you have to give it to Adesanya. Those exchanges were played very well by both men, but I did give an advantage there to Adesanya. So very impressed with Adesanya Jiu-Jitsu, even though I didn't think he would finish that triangle. I thought maybe he'll get on top of Gastelum with that triangle, because as he almost did. He almost got on top of Gastelum with the triangle. Really well played by Adesanya. I was very impressed. Gastelum has a similar shape to DC, just a bit smaller. That's from Malhab. Yes, absolutely. If I was Kelvin, I would copy everything DC does. DC has a brilliant way of fighting, and I think it's a good blueprint for Kelvin to copy and make it his own, of course, and possibly become world champion with that style. It's almost as if Kelvin is a natural fighter, as his technique seems doubtful. That's from Alternate Galactic. Altern Galactic. Altern, I would say that, no, he's a natural fighter. Yes, that's true. However, he's well-trained. He's very, very well-trained. He threw some beautiful shots to the body. Beautiful switching of stance, throwing right hooks. He had hurt Adesanya with a beautiful right hook in round 1. These are all very technical maneuvers. These maneuvers, we call them shifting, and he was hitting Adesanya to the body. Now, in my opinion, you have to be very seasoned to hit Adesanya to the body. You have to know how to set those body shots up, because you're lowering your head on a much taller opponent who can easily knee you, kick you to the face, tip you to the chin. I mean, there's a lot of danger there. So Kelvin was very slick on his feet. He was very slick, very intelligent, and in my opinion, he showed that he was not only very athletic and natural and had all those incredible talents, but also extremely well trained. If he was not well trained, in my opinion, he would have got KO'd in round 1. If he was just athletic, just a freak athlete, I think Adesanya is too smart, too seasoned, and Kelvin is so much more than that. He's so much more than just an athletic, talented kid, and he is athletic and he is talented, and he's got heart, and he's got that guts, and he's got that durability from all the years of training and wrestling and whatnot. However, he's also a very, very seasoned striker. Also been waiting over a month for my Tim Tam. Can't wait to have it shipped next week. That's from Vec31. You're probably living somewhere far off, and normally it doesn't take a month to get there. Normally shipping is done right away. We have them in stock right now. So contact them. Make sure that it's on its way. They give you a tracking number. There's a whole tracking process. You're probably from a very far off way, but it will be there for sure very shortly. Israel is a beast. Gastelum was on fire, but Israel is too gifted. That's from Trey Young. You know what? It was neck and neck going into the 5th. If you guys remember, Gastelum caught him with a left high kick in round number 4. Stole round number 4 from Adesanya. Now in round 2, I gave it to Adesanya. Round 3, it looked like Adesanya was creeping away with it. He was creating a differential, a great differential, and it seemed like we're gonna see more of that in round 4. More differential, like Adesanya was gonna start running away with it. However, early in round 4 was very tight. Gastelum had made adjustments. His coaches were telling him in the corner, keep going, show him no respect. And that's what he did. He started moving forward. And it was very tight. And then that head kick from Gastelum just gave Gastelum an easy win in that round. That was a definite Gastelum round. And close to the end of the round, Gastelum scored that head kick and then shoots in for a double. A lot of people are thinking that was a bad decision. He should have kept punching. He should have put those fists together. And maybe finish Adesanya off. Tough call. Maybe sometimes taking your opponent down and elbowing him is the better of the strategies, because a hurt opponent is still very dangerous. However, you cannot give that round to anybody but Gastelum. It was a definite Gastelum round. 100%. So we had a 4 rounds in. We had 4 rounds in, and I had a 2 apiece. And I think the vast majority of people watching had 2 rounds apiece going into the 5th round. Now, the 5th round was a definite Adesanya round. He completely, in my opinion, they could have even stopped it. Joe Rogan was calling for the stoppage. I wouldn't have complained if it was a stoppage. If there was any more time on the clock, if there was, 15, 20 more seconds on the clock, I think Adesanya would have finished the fight. Ryan Rigsby, thank you for that super chat, but I want to stay on the Gastelum Adesanya fight. Hopefully we'll get to those questions later on. Coach, what's your opinion on interim title fights? I think they're great. That's from Gino. Gino, I think they make sense. When a champion cannot defend his title, we got to give them an interim title. Why? Because look at that fight. Look at those 2 back-to-back fights. We had 2 interim titles. Don't you find that they fight with a greater fire when there's something on the line? I think so. I think you just can't get around it. Every fight is super important. However, when there's a title on the line, your mind, I think, shifts into different gears. And it shows in their fights. It really shows in their fight. And I think there was a greater atmosphere in the air. I think people know that there's a belt on the line, so people tune in more. There's just something in the air. There's just something in the air when there's a title on the fight. I think the 155 champion is Khabib Nurmagomedov, and of course Dustin Poirier. These are 2 legitimate champions. There can only be one champion. Now we know that the next fight must be between these 2 men. So it also helps build up to the next fight. There can only be one champion, but now we have 2. So we know we need to have this showdown to settle it. And it just helps build the fights. It really does help build the fights. And I think that an interim champion must be seen as a legitimate world champion. He must be seen. Whether the world champion at that time couldn't fight for logistical reasons, injury, whatever it is, we need to have a new champion crowned in the interim. And that's just, it makes sense to me. I like it. I think it builds up a great storyline, and it makes the fights more exciting. It just, for me, anyway, as a viewer, it makes the fights more exciting. Okay, guys, don't forget, we are staying on the fights that between Gastelum and Adesanya, and of course Poirier and Holloway. I really want to cover these fights thoroughly, so we're doing Gastelum and Adesanya right now. How is Gastelum able to close the distance to Adesanya? Tripped Adesanya, capitalized on it. That's from Malhab. He did a really good job. There was a major reach advantage, and I believe it was 7-inch height advantage. This is the difference between the 2. Gastelum is very robust. He's a very robust guy. When you hit him, he keeps walking forward. He's the type of guy who's very, very athletic, and he could take a shot, man. He could really take a shot. So I feel like he's very explosive. And when you hit him on the way in, when a shorter fighter crosses that distance, there's a time where you could reach him and he can't reach you. And I feel that Gastelum is really good at either defending his way in, or even when he gets hit, not backing out, keep moving forward. And that can be very troublesome for a fighter like Adesanya. You saw in round 1, Adesanya got clipped when he was throwing. When he was throwing at Gastelum, Gastelum just kind of walked in, kind of brushed off those strikes and tagged him with a very strong right hook. And Adesanya had to backpedal heavily in round 1. He backpedaled. If you see how feverishly Adesanya was backpedaling in round 1, he didn't feel like he could repel Gastelum with his strikes. Gastelum was still very explosive at that time. So he did a phenomenal job in closing the distance. From Kelvin Gastelum's performance, how do you think he would have done if he fought Whittaker? That's from Raydog. Very tough to say. Adesanya and Whittaker are 2 different fighters. I think I'd rather compare Romero versus Whittaker to give me more an idea of how Gastelum would do against Whittaker. And I think that Whittaker could have done a better job than Adesanya. And the reason for that is I think Whittaker would have made Gastelum fight backwards. At least he would have met him in the middle. And one of those 2 men were going to have to back up. And I think Whittaker would back up just because he has the longer reach. He would back up a little bit more, but he would eventually push back Gastelum. Whereas Adesanya was not trying to push back Gastelum. We haven't seen Gastelum fight backwards yet. We know he fights unbelievably well going forward. He showed that in his fight with Jacare. You know, he showed that in many fights. So I think that Whitaker was going to make a move backwards, and we would have seen if Gastelum can fight backwards. And in my opinion, he probably doesn't fight backwards well because he's not used to fighting backwards well. Again, that remains to be seen, but I'd rather compare Whitaker versus Yoel. I think that gives us a better idea of what would happen as opposed to watching Gastelum versus Adesanya. Adesanya fights very differently. He fights more of an Anderson Silva. You know, he fights much more like Anderson than Whitaker. Israel got his number after round 1. That's from Zozila. You know, I felt like that. But then round 4 showed that Gastelum still had a lot of dangerous sting in him. You know, he hurt him really badly with a left head kick. And literally, it could have been the end of the fight, honestly. Like, Adesanya was not looking well midway through round 4. However, Gastelum did elect to do the takedown, shoot for the takedown. Had he stayed with the striking, could it have been a different fight? I guess we'll never know. What else we got here? Guys, I'm not taking any other questions, please, other than Gastelum and Adesanya. Let's give a thorough review of this fight. It was an epic battle. Just a few more questions, and then we'll move to Poirier, Holloway, another epic battle that night. And then we can talk about, you know, bare knuckle boxing, the Dillashaw drug test positive. Let's get into all these things. You know, I'm going to try to make this an extra long podcast because I have been away for a while. Again, a special thanks to Abe for keeping this channel updated. My cousin Sammy for posting them on iTunes. Thank you to the team for making this channel consistent. Very, very appreciated. And I hope to do these on a regular basis. I know I've been away, again, traveling, fights, competition, and other things taking up my time. But I am going to stick with this format and hopefully keep doing instructional videos on YouTube and, of course, on jujiclub.com. Make sure you go to jujiclub.com and check out the 2 instructional videos I've put up. Great reviews there already for those 2 instructionals. What else we got here? Okay, let's go. Kelvin Gastelum's hand speed, the fastest you've seen in UFC. That's from Prakul. No, definitely not the fastest I've seen in UFC. I wouldn't say he's the fastest puncher, even in the middleweight division. I think he's a great puncher, but he's more of a power guy. I would say he's more of an explosiveness type guy. He's very... because for me, speed is going out and coming back. It's not just going out. Okay, so going out is really important, throwing the punch forward. But I feel on his retraction, he's lacking some snap on his retraction. And that's why if you look at round number 5, Adesanya tags him with maybe 5 or between 5 and 7 really powerful right hands. And the first one was on Gastelum's retraction. So Gastelum throws his big left on the retraction. Adesanya meets him back in, tags him with the right, and that really hurt Kelvin. And then it was just a stumbling block from there. Kelvin gets hit with another right, and another right, and another right, then gets dropped, and then gets caught with a really big elbow by Adesanya. But for me, it was a question of how he pulled his punch back. He got countered off his own left hand. So Kelvin throws a left. On the retraction, he gets hit with an Adesanya right hand, and that was the domino that knocked the next right hand into play, and it was just a downward spiral from there. We got a super chat. Hopefully, it's on the Gastelum fight. Oh no, it's just straight up a donation. Thank you, Ryan. Could leg kicks have stopped Gastelum's pressure? Tahir Salki. I would have thought that Adesanya should have kicked more. Maybe not just to the leg, but to the body. And his cornermen were calling for the body kick. They were telling him, we want more body kicks. And I agree with them. I totally agree. I felt that Adesanya boxed too much. He punched with a puncher way too much in that fight. He should have went to the kicks. He should have thrown more knees. He landed a beautiful knee in round 3. He landed a knee, I believe, again in round 5, if I remember correctly. But definitely there was one knee in that fight where I felt like, why isn't he doing this more? He should keep kneeing that body. Very important to knee the body, especially on a shorter man. For us, why are Mexicans so tough? All Mexican fighters seem to have super good chins. Ferguson, Diaz, Bros, Ortega, Kelvin. That's from Venom Musk. Venom, I have noticed the very same thing. You know, not to be stereotypical here, okay? Please forgive me if this sounds in any way me playing on a stereotype, but Mexicans are just super tough, man. Like I gotta give it to them. They're very tough. And if you look at the boxing world, there's so much evidence of very tough Mexican fighters. Now, why that is it due to genetics? Is it due to culture? Is it due to their demographic location? I don't know. Is it due to their environment, I should say? I don't know. However, it does seem to be a very common trend that Mexican fighters are extremely tough. And you know what? Every Mexican fighter I've ever trained had a great chin, and every Irish fighter I've ever trained had a great chin and a great punch. You know, so I mean, there is like a stigma to it. There is a stereotype in the fighting world. What is it due to? I have no idea. You know, I'm not going to speculate on that, but I do agree with you that they are tough, man. They are tough, hard, strong, durable people. Let's just leave it at that. Adesanya reported a knee injury from training, which is why he couldn't kick like he planned. But who knows? Gastelum is a beast too. Amazing heart from all the fighters. Well, Chris, thank you, Chris, for that comment. I didn't hear about his knee injury, so maybe that's why he didn't kick. I really did feel that it was something that he does really, really well and could have helped him immensely in that fight. So if he had a knee injury, maybe that explains it. If he came out and said that he had a knee injury, I believe him, because it didn't make sense to me that he wasn't kicking any more than he should. You know, he should have kicked more. And if he says it's because he had a knee injury, I definitely believe him. Why couldn't Kelvin really adjust to Israel's right hand? That's from Jay. You know, he got stunned really bad. Maybe he didn't know what shot hit him. You know, we'd have to ask him. That's a really good question. I would like to hear Kelvin's take on that. Sometimes when you get hit with a shot, you're not sure which shot hit you, because the thing is, he kept getting hit with the right hand. And you're right, he did not adjust. I didn't feel like he adjusted. But was he seeing those right hands? There was a few shots that I felt he didn't even see them. He just got hit really, and sometimes fighters, that's why whenever I have a fighter that's hit with a shot, I like to tell him between rounds, I like to tell him what he got hit with, because sometimes fighters after the fight will tell me, I know I got hit, I remember fighting for my life, but I don't remember what hit me. Because when you get stunned, you lose those last few seconds. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes you lose those last few seconds, and you just kind of wake up in the fight, and you know you're in a scramble here. You know you're in a fight for your life here. You know you're about, the situation. You wake up in the situation. You know that it's urgent. You know your legs are rubbery. The room is maybe spinning a little bit, and you feel that sensation. I've been buzzed in practice in the past, and I know that I know the feeling. Okay, and it's a confusing feeling, but you know that you're in danger. You just might not know what happened. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why he didn't adjust. Maybe he didn't know it was the right hand. You know, sometimes you get hurt and you know what you got hit with. Sometimes you get hurt and you're not sure. Why did his lips get so swollen? That's from Jonathan Fernandez. I believe it was due to the punch. You know, Kelvin landed mostly punches. I don't think he landed some leg kicks, no kicks. He did land one kick to the face. Yes, that is true. But I think it was mostly due to his punches. Okay. All right, guys. Let's do one more Kelvin question. Thoughts on Kelvin going for a takedown when he had easy hurt at the end of the fourth? We talked about that. Listen, it's hindsight's 2020. You know, I've trained with Kelvin in the past. His top game is really good. Like if he took Adesanya down and started raining down elbows on Adesanya, it could have been all she wrote. So maybe that's why I really feel that Kelvin is confident in his ground and pound. However, it might have been wiser because Kelvin was really, Izzy was very hurt on his feet, that maybe he kept punching and maybe finished the fight that way. However, I think Israel is very dangerous. Even when he was hurt, fighters are still dangerous. I think it wasn't crazy that Kelvin shot in a double leg. I know a lot of people are telling me that was like the worst decision in his career. I don't agree. If we make if we have to decide with the same amount of information he had then, everybody's always, hindsight is 2020. Everybody's so wise after the fight. Of course, it's a mistake because he didn't finish him with the double leg attempt. He didn't even get the double leg attempt. But if we were in his position at that time, with the information he had at that time, you have a hurt Adesanya. He's wobbly on his feet. Do you keep going with punches and maybe get finished because Adesanya is very dangerous when he's hurt? You know he's going to throw his best shot. You know he's going to go for it. Or do you double leg him? He seems, let's be honest now, Adesanya is not a world-class wrestler. He's a very good defensive wrestler. He's proven to be an excellent, highly competent defensive wrestler. However, he has not been wrestling from childhood. Okay? He's hurt. Would you take this striking expert off his feet right now, get on top of him, because you are super confident in your ground and pound? And I really believe Kelvin is super confident that if he got that double leg, he would have transitioned to half guard right away and started raining down elbows. And his elbows are vicious. Okay, his elbows. He's a big, strong kid, and you do not want Kelvin Gastelum on top of you. You do not want Kelvin Gastelum on top of you. The kid's a beast, man. He's a monster. With that information, okay, not knowing that he's going to miss the double, Adesanya is going to defend and kind of get a few seconds to recover and go back in the next round and come back even stronger. You don't know that. At that time, with Kelvin's information that he had, it's not a crazy decision to try to swoop in, double leg him, get him off his feet now. Now's the time. He's hurt. And just finish him off with those elbows. It wasn't a crazy decision. I think it could have been, it was his call. You know, as a coach, I wouldn't have burned him for it. I wouldn't have been upset with him at all. I think that with the information he had at that time, it made a lot of sense. Okay, guys, let's talk about the next epic interim title fight. Poirier versus Holloway. What a fight. What a fight. Now, listen, I had picked Adesanya over Kelvin, but I had picked, and I felt it was a 50-50 fight, but, after getting my arm twist, asking to pick, I just picked Holloway, but for me, it was a 50-50 fight. However, after watching the fight, I did not think it was a 50-50 fight. I gave 4 rounds to Poirier and 1 round to Holloway. Now, I know Khabib said it was a draw, from what I understand. I didn't hear his comments, but I saw a headline, Khabib saying it's a draw. I'm going to have to disagree. I really felt Holloway did some good work, and some of the rounds were close. However, at a minimum, I give 3 rounds to Poirier. I give 4 rounds to Poirier. Okay, I give 4 rounds to Poirier. Maybe one of those rounds was a draw. I give round 3 to Holloway. For me, round 3 was a Holloway round. However, at the most generous I can be, I would have given max 2 rounds. Okay, so for me, there was a definite winner. It was Dustin Poirier. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying it wasn't a close fight. Okay, it was a back and forth fight, but there was a clear winner. One of those 2 men won 4 rounds. At the very least, Poirier won 3. That's just how I saw the fight. Now, I watched it one time, and then I kind of I skimmed through a few of the rounds, and I felt that, look, Poirier won at least 3 rounds. Okay, so I want to hear what you guys have to say. I really want to hear. 100% Poirier 4-1. That's from Rob Jeffrey. But a draw, no way. That's from Verdam. From what I understand, listen, I don't want to quote Khabib, but too much, because I just saw a headline. And headlines can be very misleading. So please, if I got that wrong, correct me here. But I did see that he had posted a tweet, and they were quoting his tweet and saying that he thought it was a draw. I had it 3-2 Poirier. That's from Priam. Priam, what rounds did you give to Holloway? I gave round 3. What other round did you give to Holloway? Why was Mac's defense so bad for Ross? That's from Sam. I had the same feeling. I thought Holloway could have won that fight. I think both men could win that fight. Here's how I see a fight. Okay, so let me make my comments as clear as possible. There is material. Okay, first of all, we have to look at the material. So let's look at chess. Okay, let's say me and you are playing a chess game. It's me versus you. Now, coach is going to beat you, right? Why? I'll tell you why coach is going to beat you. I got all my pieces, and you only have a king and a pawn. Okay, I have more material than you do. That's how we're going to play. We're going to play. I'm taking away all your pieces, except I'm going to give you your king. You have to have the king, and I'm going to give you 1 pawn. Now, you're a chess champion. You're the best chess player in history. I'm just an average chess player. I'm like a Joe Blow chess player. I play once a week. guess what? I'm going to beat you. Why? I have more of everything than you. You cannot beat me. Like, the odds of you beating me are astronomically small. Like, I'd have to purposely lose. I would have to purposely lose. Okay? When a fighter goes into a fight, if he has better boxing, if he has better grappling, if he has better wrestling, he has better kicks, he has better knees, he has better conditioning, he has better everything, significantly better. The strategy doesn't matter. The guy with less, he can have the best strategy in the world. It doesn't matter. You need that material. Okay. So going into this fight, I thought the material was quite even on both sides. Now, I had pros and cons for both fighters. However, when you have equal amounts of material, let's say you have all your chess pieces, I have all my chess pieces. Now it all comes down to tactical. It all comes down to how we play the game. I feel that both of them have really good striking. I feel that both of them have really good grappling. I feel that both of them have really good conditioning. And I don't believe it's equal on all. Okay, I believe that there's some advantages, but they're still fairly equal. I felt that this fight could have been 50-50, could have been a seesaw battle. I really couldn't make up my mind. So many people kept asking me, who do you think is going to win? I just couldn't make up my mind. And the last minute, you know what? I just threw, I just said, look, let me just pick Holloway because I just can't make up my mind. However, I feel that strategically, Poirier fought smart and Holloway fought with his heart. Holloway fought blood and guts. He fought with his heart. And so did Poirier. Poirier fought with heart and brains. Heart and brains. He was just more strategic than Holloway. He was more strategic. He was playing the game, whereas Holloway was trying to win with pure heart and grit and will. And I thought it was a poor choice. I thought he could have done better. He forgot to move his feet. He forgot to move his head. He forgot to parry. He forgot all these things. Why? Because he was egging on. He was too busy egging on Poirier to hit him. And Poirier was more than willing to hit him. He was more than willing to hit him. And he landed the more powerful strikes, the cleaner strikes. And Poirier was more defensively responsible. Let's just be honest. At the end of the day, Holloway was defensively irresponsible. And I love the guy. I admire him as a fighter. I think he's one of the greats. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame. The man is a brilliant fighter. He just, in my opinion, he got too much in the heat of the battle. And it happens. It happens to the best of fighters. I'm not going to say that... I'm not trying to critique him here. Okay, the guy's a brilliant man. He's a brilliant fighter. He will be world champ. He's still world champion, and he may be world champion at 155 again. He may come back to sweep the division. Who knows? That remains to be seen. Okay, but he's still a candidate, and he's still the featherweight world champion. Let's not forget that. Okay, so the man's a brilliant fighter. However, Dustin was strategically superior, materialistically speaking. Like I was talking about earlier. I feel that Holloway belongs there in that world title fight. He belongs there. He has the durability. He has the technique. His kickboxing is excellent. He was just irresponsible that night. And I think that a lot of us would see it that way. A lot of the coaches and fighters out there watching the fight, I think may have the same feelings. Dustin was not being so strategic as he was stronger and was bullying his way through Max. That's from Mumshell. Mumshell, I'd have to disagree. I would have to disagree. Just because he got hit doesn't mean he was irresponsible. I thought he balanced offense and defense very responsibly. And I would have to differ. If you can give me a concrete example of why you think that, I'd be more than happy to. I felt that Holloway was getting hit by the same shots and not adjusting. Just not adjusting. And he didn't really kick too much. I just feel like he was boxing with a really good boxer where he should have been kicking and kneeing and elbowing, and he should have been, kicking the legs. I felt that Poirier was kicking more. I just felt that he had to mix it up more, use his other tools. Dustin showed a fantastic defense. That's from Jay. Jay, I would have to agree. He showed a very intelligent and seasoned defense. Yes, I would have to agree with you. I think Max doesn't ever excel at 155. That's possible, Lance. We're going to have to wait and see. I think he's maturing as a fighter, and he might go back and look at that fight and make adjustments. He's a smart kid. We're going to have to wait and see. I think it's still too early to say. What do you think of Dustin's shoulder roll from Southpaw, paragon of growth? I think that's an excellent maneuver, and it worked well for him. In round Round one, Dustin hurt Holloway. Then Holloway hurt him right back with a nice check hook. And then Dustin kind of rolled with the shoulder. And I think that saved Dustin a little bit. It saved him some damage. And I won't say I'm not saying it was going to get finished, but it saved him some damage. And I gave him round one. I gave Dustin round one because he came back again to hurt Holloway. However, if he wasn't rolling like that and Holloway got the ball rolling on his side, it could have been a problem. However, Dustin was smart. He got out of trouble. He recalculated his position. He got off the fence. He rolled. He got off the fence, went back to the center, and put in some good work. And that's some great fighting. How did Dustin get in on Max? That's from Dustin Levanto. Well, he did a variety of counter punches. He had some very nice counter punches. And I felt that Max was telegraphing quite a bit that night. Max looked small in there. That's from Mercy. I didn't feel he looked small. You guys tell me. But I felt that they were of even size. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Can Max go back down to featherweight? Let's see. If he can't go back down to featherweight, in my opinion, he's a natural 55er now. He's grown into 155. If he does go back and performs really well, maybe he's undersized and it was just an illusion. Maybe he is a 145er. I don't know. I feel like now he's grown into 155. We'll have to wait and see. It could be that he goes back down to 145 and dominates there. I feel that if weight cut is not an issue for him, he should continue to dominate at 145. At least for the very near future. He should win one or two more fights at 145. If he can make that weight cut. Max looked very skinny. That's from Sam. Well, I guess Max was small. I guess you guys do think that he was small. Let's see. We'll have to wait and see. Coach, how are Dustin's chances against Khabib? That's from Konstantin Servi, a blue belt member. Thank you, Konstantin, man. I really appreciate you being a member of this channel. Listen, I like that fight. It's gonna be a really interesting fight. I just feel that it will be a Khabib night. I feel that Khabib's power is he's got great power. The striking is going to be very interesting. However, those takedowns, man, I just don't know if Dustin can stop those takedowns. I think Dustin is smart enough to come up with a really good plan. Him and his team are very smart. Okay, not smart enough, super smart. I'm just saying that the challenge is really high. Okay, Khabib is the best lightweight of all time. In my opinion, he's the best lightweight of all time. He will get those takedowns. I really believe he'll get those takedowns. And once he gets on top, we'll have to wait and see what Khabib does. But I do believe the guy who still has the best chance of beating Khabib is Tony Ferguson. So for me, when I look at the roster right now, the guy with the best chance to beat Khabib is Ferguson. And don't forget, Ferguson has never been dethroned. So for me, there are 3 champions right now. There are 3. There's Khabib, of course, undisputed. There's Dustin, interim champion, and there's the man who was stripped of his title. Rightfully so. He had, I believe, it's been a year. I believe he was stripped before the year was up, if I remember correctly. They had stripped him before, which I thought was unfair. It shouldn't be stripped. However, I do believe now it's been a year since he won against Kevin Lee, and I still believe that he is arguably the best 155er in the world. But if you ask me to make that decision, I would pick Khabib. I just believe that people have a good argument when they say it's Tony Ferguson. I just believe that it's a good argument. Even though I don't agree, I still believe that it is Khabib. It is Khabib's time right now. For how long, that remains to be seen. But right now, you can argue for Dustin. You can argue for Tony. And of course, without a doubt, you can argue for Khabib. And I think most people would agree it's Khabib. Okay, so now we're still talking about Dustin Holloway fight. We're still on that topic right now. Do you feel that Max is a better matchup to beat Khabib than Dustin? That's from Paragon. No, I don't believe so. I believe that Dustin is the better matchup. Dustin is the more strategic fighter. And to beat Khabib, you're going to need lots of talent, you're going to need lots of skill, and you're going to need a very, very good strategy. So you're going to need all those 3 to beat Khabib. Gaethje would pose a threat to Khabib. That's from Think Justin. Yes, I do believe so. He's a threat, but I still pick Khabib, even though Justin is a brilliant fighter and would be an amazing fight. Okay, guys, don't forget, we are still on the topic of Dustin versus Holloway. I'm going to do a few more fights. Then we can talk about TJ Dillashaw and bare knuckle boxing. I know those are two major topics that we haven't discussed because I've been away. But let's dig it up now, and let's just finish the post-fight analysis on Dustin and Holloway. What an epic fight. What an epic fight. Brilliant performance by both men. But at the end of the day, I had to give it a head and shoulders win for Dustin Poirier. Head and shoulders above. You know, he really shined that night. He really rose to the occasion. Dustin, just stand up, can beat Khabib. That's from Roger M. I don't know, man. Khabib's stand-up is really good. It's highly underrated. Highly underrated. We saw him with McGregor. You know, in round 3, it was all stand-up mostly. There was some cage wrestling, of course, but there was a lot of stand-up. And I felt it was neck and neck. And I know the judges officially gave it to McGregor, but I felt it was a very close round, striking-wise. I felt that McGregor landed more, but Khabib landed more powerful shots. Tough call to make. I agree. And no, I won't argue with the judges. If they gave it to McGregor, I wasn't there live that night. I wasn't watching the fights live. I was watching it live on TV. But when you're there up against the cage and you're watching those shots land, you kind of feel that power transfer. You know, you kind of sense it a little bit more. And when I was watching it live, I had given it to Khabib. Then I saw the judges and I talked to a few other people. A lot of people gave it to McGregor. So I agreed. You know what? Let's make it a McGregor round. Again, because I wasn't there live. So I would agree with the judges. All 3 judges, if I remember correctly, all 3 judges gave it to McGregor. So, but however, the striking in round 2, you know, he drops McGregor early. You know, he just was all over McGregor, standing on the ground, wrestling. It was just all over. He's just all over him. I think he could do the same to Poirier. Khabib's stand-up is excellent, question mark. Come on, Faraz. That's from Ludwig. Guys, his stand-up... Okay, let's look at his stand-up. He had a bad performance standing against Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson was tagging him. I agree. It was a bad performance. He fought a southpaw. It even brought a lot of them we had a few days ago. 4 or 5 days ago, we had an ice storm here in Quebec. And it's been wreaking havoc. Live stream offline. Okay, I have officially lost my stream. Stream crashed. Oh, that's not good. Okay, guys, not sure if it's on again. Just came back. You are online now. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, we were talking about Poirier. Excuse me, we're talking about Khabib's stand-up. YouTube shut me down because I said Khabib's stand-up was good. Okay, guys, let's look at the facts. Okay, now don't forget. I understand there are mechanical issues. I understand there are mechanical issues with Khabib's movement. However, let's put that aside for now. Let's look at the results. He had a bad fight standing up with Michael Johnson. I think we could all agree he got hit with shots that, you know, we were all thinking, hey, if that kept going, if he could stop that takedown, that could be a very bad night for Khabib. So I agree with you. There were problems with the stand-up. And then he fights Alaquinta. He showed an incredible jump in his stand-up. He won all the stand-up in that fight. All of it. In my opinion, there was some nice strikes from Alaquinta. Alaquinta was very competitive. He did a really good job. He lasted all 5 rounds. However, Khabib landed the better shots. Whether it was due to the fear of Iaquinta getting taken down, and that created a real problem. You know, he had to divide his attention between the takedown defense and the striking. Be that as it may, nonetheless, Khabib outstruck and outlanded Iaquinta, and Iaquinta is one of the best strikers in the division. Ala Quinta is one of the best punchers in the division, guys. No question about it. Nobody's going to argue that. The man's fights speak for themselves. So, with that said, he goes and he fights McGregor. He drops McGregor. How many fighters out there have dropped McGregor? Only Nate Diaz. Only Nate Diaz. So we have to give Khabib his due. He's landing shots. Forget about his mechanics. Forget about his twitchiness. Forget about his head movement. Forget about that for now. Did McGregor hit him? Yes, McGregor hit him. Did he walk through those strikes? Yes, he did. McGregor did land the left hand. In round 3, he landed plenty of left hands. And it seemed like every other guy's left hand. It didn't seem like anything special. Khabib took them well. And Khabib kept responding. And Khabib kept landing his own strikes. So much so that the takedowns at round 4, I mean, the takedown was, almost, it looked effortless by Khabib. Khabib threw some strikes, grabbed onto a single, tripped him, got on top of him, and just there was nothing left for McGregor. McGregor had no more grappling left. He had no more striking left. He had no more wrestling left. It seemed like it was just an overwhelming round 4. It was an overwhelming round 4. So, in my opinion, let's just call it Khabib's combination of wrestling and striking would be too much, in my opinion, for everybody in the lightweight division. Okay, but it remains to be seen. There's a lot of competitive fights out there to make. But I do believe that Khabib's striking, maybe it's not pretty. Maybe it's not mechanically sound. 100% mechanically sound. However, it is effective. He gets the job done. Look, the man knocked down McGregor, for goodness sake. McGregor is an elite puncher. Elite. The man fought Mayweather for 10 rounds, for goodness sake. The guy is a masterful counterpuncher. He's got an incredible chin. He's super precise. Talking about McGregor here. His shot selection is amazing. His diversity, he throws the kicks. He has a beautiful diversity of kicks, elbows. He's a brilliant striker. And Khabib went neck and neck with him. Effectiveness is there, even though his mechanics... I felt like, McGregor really criticized Khabib's striking. He said, look, you're a twitcher. Your head doesn't move. You're going to get lit up. You're not going to be able to stop my striking. He did. He got the better... If you weigh all the striking in that fight, there was 4 rounds, okay? And even though round 4 was not too long, there was still not very much striking around number 4. Not much striking around 1 and 2 even. However, if you accumulate all the striking there was, it was very competitive. Very competitive. And McGregor is arguably the best striker in the UFC, let alone the lightweight division in the UFC. Okay, so let's not forget that he's striking, whether it's due to his aggressive wrestling. Or maybe some of you are going to argue that because they have to watch out for the takedown so much, it divides their attention, that it makes Khabib's striking look better than it is. I would agree with you. I would say, look, that's still making his striking very effective. For whatever reason, his striking is very effective. Now, in my opinion, that's enough for him to be the greatest lightweight of all time. Even though his mechanics of punching, his punching mechanics are not as pretty. And even Javier Mendez said it. He said, look, we're not going in there to strike with McGregor. We know that McGregor is this elite striker. We know. He was saying that. Look, the whole team knows. Khabib is going to go in there and use his striking and wrestling together to beat McGregor. So I would agree with you, with many of you who think that his striking is not the most efficient. But what I'm saying is it's super effective. It's highly effective. Okay, guys, thank you, Jason, for the super chat, but I'm only doing post-fight analysis. We're doing Poirier versus Holloway, epic battle. So I want to give it its due time here. I was talking about Khabib because Dustin is the next man to fight Khabib. So it's all relevant. I'll talk about the lightweight division, the world title here. And then we're going to move on to bare knuckle boxing and the Dillashaw story, okay? What else we got here? How would Khabib fare against McGregor in just a stand-up battle? Sam. That's from Sam. Look, that's a great question. We won't know until both of them get in there. Okay, but I would favor McGregor. If it was just stand-up, no wrestling allowed, of course, McGregor's a striker. McGregor, that's his realm. That's his forte. Okay, but that's not MMA. That's not an MMA fight. Poirier versus McGregor now. That's from DJ MK. That's a great question. That's a very good question. Listen, that remains to be seen. I feel that McGregor, he's got Dustin's number. You know, his style. When they fought, I felt it confused Poirier. And that could be a very confusing style. It remains to be seen. Poirier has had a lot of gains, obviously. That at the very least, we can say that he's changed as a fighter. I would say a lot more than that. I say he's adjusted a lot of his skills. A lot of his skills have been adjusted. He's far better now than when he fought McGregor. But so is McGregor. McGregor's been a lot of world title fights since then. He's in his peak. He's at his prime. In my opinion, if I had to choose, it's not an easy fight to choose, but I would choose McGregor on this one just because I feel stylistically with his kicks, McGregor's going to stay at a safe range with his kicks. His takedown defense is really good. And even if he gets taken down, he's got the jiu-jitsu. He's got 5 rounds to connect with that left. And that left is, as you all know, I gave it the old name, the touch of death. And I still believe that it's relevant. I still believe it's a super powerful weapon. It's going to be, obviously, fighters now are more aware of it. However, I just feel that McGregor's style is just, it's going to clash with Poirier's style. Again, it remains to be seen. I would like to review that fight. If it does happen, I'll give it a thorough review. But if you're giving me just off the top of my head now, not going over footage and all that, I would probably pick McGregor. I feel that Dustin has grown mentally as well since the McGregor fight. Adam. That's from Adam. I would agree. Definitely, without a doubt. Tony and Dustin have a good cardio. They can handle Khabib's pace. That's from Roger M. I agree, but so does Khabib. Khabib doesn't seem to get tired at all, especially in the McGregor fight. He didn't look the least bit fatigued. Like, he had no wear on him whatsoever. And the Iaquinta fight as well. Like, I really felt that he could do 5 rounds quite easily, quite comfortably. Dustin Poirier said it takes a few fights for your body to get accustomed to the higher weight class. Holloway needed to be more dense. That's from Vince Ortiz. Maybe. That is possible. Poirier, for those of you who don't know, was also a 145er. He came up to 155, had some very good success. A few setbacks, but really, really good success. And it looks really good. And now he's a world champion. He did have maybe some adjustment period. Maybe his first few fights were not as comfortable. If he said that, maybe he wasn't accustomed to the size differential, but however, now he's world champion, so he's definitely, to say the very least, he's adapted. Why couldn't Dustin secure any takedowns? That's from Ray Dog. It's an interesting comment. He did shoot on Holloway, didn't have any success with the takedowns. Holloway's a good counter wrestler, and Holloway had that beautiful Darce attempt. I believe it was round 3 at the bell, at the buzzer. You know what? I wouldn't be shocked if Holloway got that Darce. It wouldn't have shocked me. Holloway's a brilliant jiu-jitsu guy. I would have loved to see how that Darce played out. Because I felt it could have been the fight ender. Because that momentum had started going his way. He started tagging Poirier. Poirier kind of stumbled down. And Poirier, he's been finished in the past. And I felt that he can get that sub. It was a real possibility. Okay, guys, that was phenomenal. Let's move on to either the other big news. We had Lowball fight Jason Knight in an epic bare knuckle boxing fight that made a lot of waves. And let's talk about also the TJ Dillashaw issue. And let's get those 2 topics on the way. Guys, don't forget, get your Juji Club. Go to jujiclub.com. Get your Heel Hook Everyone mug. There's a few other cool mugs on there. Check them out. I drink my coffee from these kind of mugs every single day. They make your heel hooks like 50% better, so make sure you get one of those Heel Hook Everyone mugs. Great mugs. Okay, so I feel sad for bare knuckle fighters. That's from Sam. Sam, I got mixed feelings about bare knuckle fighting. Okay, so let me give you guys my initial thoughts. 1, too much blood. Okay, I don't want to sound like I got a queasy stomach here, but for me, it's just too much blood. Too much damage. The eyes are swelling. The knuckles are breaking. The blood is pouring. The cuts. These young faces, these young fighters, these young faces getting mangled trash, scar after scar. What are they going to look like after 15, 20 fights? What are they going to look like? Is their face going to look like hamburger meat? Now, I know this is cosmetic, but this is your face. For goodness sake, guys, this is your face. This is your sacred. This is your face, man. This is your image. This is how your face. And I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. But if your face gets mangled, it could have some serious psychological repercussions. And I know a lot of you are going to tell me, look, coach, it's safer because you don't have a glove on. You can't hit the guy as hard as often. You know, for those of you who don't know, once your knuckles start hurting, and you can't really hit the guy that hard, especially if you hit the top of the head, you break your hand. You'll more likely break your hand than hurt the other guy. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the brain. Let's talk about the brain a little bit later. Let's talk about your appearance, your face. Do you want to turn your face into hamburger meat? Is that going to affect your psyche? Maybe you fight 4 or 5 bare knuckle fights, and now you're scarred your whole fight. And now you're seeing children look at your face and they run screaming. Your wife looks at you and her stomach gets queasy because your face looks like you're the Frankenstein. For goodness sake, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Like a lot of us were talking about it in the gym. How much would it cost for you to do bare knuckle boxing? And I landed at I think a lot of us were like, okay, at $500,000, I'll do a bare knuckle fight. Like I'll go in there and I'll get mangled. And we'll go. They want us to go toe to toe. They want us to fight hard. Even though I probably wouldn't fight that way, it's just not in my psyche. But okay, you're gonna get 50 stitches on your face. You're gonna mangle your face. For me, there's no price. Okay, guys, we're throwing $500,000 out there. We're talking. It was a funny kind of conversation. It was a joking kind of conversation. Don't put too much weight on this, okay? We're kind of joking around in the gym, Okay, 500. It's hard to say no now. It starts to get hard to say no. You can secure your family's future. You can put in an investment. Okay, maybe what about it? But for the amount of money these guys are fighting for, in my opinion, scarring your face, getting hundreds of stitches. Because if you're going to make a career out of this, you're going to get hundreds of stitches in your face. Hundreds. You're going to look like Frankenstein at the end of your career. Is it worth it? For me, no. For me, no. In my opinion, it's just not worth it. Psychologically. Okay, because you're going to look at your face and you're going to see, the way you present yourself to the world just being mangled. And forever now, you're going to have to explain to people why you look like Frankenstein. Why do you look like Frankenstein? Why do you have no teeth? Why do you slur your words when you talk? Why is your lip so deformed? Why is your nose completely sideways? Why is your eye hanging low? Why is your skin look like sandpaper? Okay, now, for those of you who don't know, when you're hitting each other bare knuckle, cuts are going to happen. Cuts are going to happen. I don't care if you're slick. Cuts are going to happen. Now, let's talk about the brain. I bet you the brain is safer, and it's the more important of the two. It's safer in bare knuckle. Why? Because I can't hit you as often, as hard with a bare knuckle. Because I'm going to miss. I'm not always going to hit you in the face area. Okay, so if I hit you in the nose, if I hit you in the jaw or the chin, my fist is safe. Okay, it's fairly safe. If I hit you in the cheekbone or I hit you in the skull, my hand might start to get injured. Okay, so if I hit you right here, like right in the cheekbone, okay, let's call it 50-50. The structures are equally sound. However, if I hit you in the forehead, the bone density in your forehead is far superior to the bone density, far denser than the bone density in your knuckles. Okay? You're going to break your hand. If two structures collide, it doesn't matter which structure is hitting the other. What matters is which structure is more dense, more sound, more robust. And the skull is more robust. You're more likely to break your hand, obviously, bare knuckle boxing. So if I hurt my hand in round one, I'm going to be punching you really with less power, just by reflex. I'm going to be punching, but it's going to be my hand is tenderized. My hand is tender. I can't hit with full force. Now in MMA, if you gave me a choice, if you said, Coach, we're going to let you mount this man, he's going to be defensive, and we want you to do as much damage as you can in 20 seconds. Do you want gloves or no gloves? I would ask for gloves. I would say, no, give me gloves. I could do more damage. Why? Because I can hit this guy, and if I miss, doesn't matter. My hand will be safer. My hand is less likely to break, and I can deliver more damage, no doubt. Okay, so when we're talking about brain safety, I would agree that MMA gloves are safer than boxing gloves, and I would agree, than boxing. MMA would be safer, just punching wise. Okay, I know MMA is more dangerous than boxing, in my opinion. I would say because of the knees and elbows, it makes it more dangerous. We're talking about just straight punching. What's more dangerous? Punching in boxing, punching in MMA, or punching in bare knuckle? In boxing, we're gonna get more total strikes to the head. Obviously, because there are more rounds. There's more time. Your hands are safer. You can do more punching. You're less likely to break your hand. You're likely in boxing to land more punches before you break your hand. Let's put it that way. Okay, just to be more specific, because I know a lot of you guys are going to pick on the details here. In MMA, you are less likely to break your hand. You're going to land more punches before breaking your hand than in bare knuckle boxing. Okay, so you're going to land more punches without breaking your hand in boxing. You have more time to land punches. Your hands are more protected. Then the second tier would be MMA, and then the last tier would be bare knuckle boxing. So if you think about it in that sense, bare knuckle boxing should be safer for the brain, for concussion. Because if you get knocked out, you're going to knock out one shot. You're not going to hit 50 times in one round, then get knocked out. Okay? So in that sense, I would have to agree. However, for me, the fact that it's going to irreparably mangle your face, for me, that's just too much. I think your face it's a sacred part of your body. Your face is a sacred part of your body. That's what you present to the world. Do you want to present the world hamburger meat for the rest of your days? Do you want people to associate hamburger meat with your face? Concussion is also super important. Okay, they're both equally important. Or maybe, okay, let's give the brain even a higher. I'd rather my face be mangled than my brain be mangled. I'll give you guys that. I'm sure that's a point people are going to bring up. I agree. However, I feel that still bare knuckle boxing is a sure. It's more likely you're going to hurt your face than in MMA you're going to hurt your brain irreparably. Okay, so if you fight smart in MMA, you can walk away healthy. If you fight smart in bare knuckle boxing, you're still going to get your face mangled up. That's just my opinion. I heard they got paid $50K. That's from Sam. Sam, for me, that's not enough. It's just not enough. It's just too much. It's too much to mangle your face like that. Again, listen, I watched the fight. I thought it was epic performance by both men. I don't want to take away from their performance. They fought with a lot of heart. They gave the fans what the fans wanted. It's not what I want, honest. I prefer a technical match. It's not what I wanted. I felt that they went in there, Lobov and Jason Knight went in there and gave the fans what they wanted. They gave an epic performance in terms of entertainment for the fans. But for me, they gave me what I didn't want. I don't want to see blood and guts. I don't want to see cuts. I don't want to see bodies dropping, and I don't want to see the gore. I dislike that part of the fight. For me, bare knuckle boxing is too much gore. I'm not a huge fan. Okay, so if you guys are into that, that's your business. That's your bag. For me, I'm not gonna be watching too much bare knuckle boxing. For me, MMA is my tolerance level. That's what I can take. For me, bare knuckle it made me queasy. I watched it because I respect those two men. I think they're really great fighters. I will watch other bare knuckle boxing fights if they have names that interest me. However, if they're names that I don't recognize or interest me, I won't be watching too much bare knuckle boxing. For me, it's too bloody. What are Artem's chances versus Paulie? That's from Doggy Frenchman. Now, I assume you mean bare knuckle boxing. From what I understand, Paulie Malignaggi is going to be fighting in bare knuckle boxing. He's probably going to fight Lobov. That's a possibility. I think that that could be a very big seller for the organization. And by the way, I really like the organization. Let's put the fights aside. I really love what they did with the arena. They made it a circle. They made the ropes. Now the ropes, they didn't look like ropes to me. They didn't look like they had any give. They looked like they were iron bars. Like they didn't move. I thought it was brilliant. Usually there's a vertical rope that holds the horizontal ropes together. It didn't seem like a regular ring rope. Okay, now for those who didn't see it, they made the ring round. They circled that square, they said, or square that circle, whatever they wanted to say. And I thought the layout was brilliant. I thought the presentation of the fights were brilliant. Like the production was really, really good. I think this event could really go somewhere. Now, if they have Paul Nalji versus Artem Lobov, I think that could be a mega fight for them. They can start off their young career as a promotion with a mega fight. Why? There's a huge story behind that matchup. A lot of us know about it already. And I think it would make for an epic fight. Now, it's bare knuckle. In a boxing fight with boxing gloves, I would give a landslide win for Malignaggi. Bare knuckle, in my opinion, almost anything can happen. Now, Malignaggi, for those of you who don't know, he beat the likes of Zab Judah, once upon a time. He's past his prime. He hasn't fought in years. He had a string of losses at the end of his career. He's still a world-class puncher, in my opinion. He's a world-class boxer. If he gets in shape for a Lobov fight, in my opinion, he wins that fight. However, I would never count Lobov out because it's bare knuckle and Lobov has the heart, he has the chin, and he has the power to upset that night. I would still, nonetheless, give a significant margin for Paulie. Paulie's footwork is going to be too much. His head movement, his style of fighting, his counter-punching ability, his ability to string his punches together, I think would be too much. In the long run, he would not only outpoint, but probably finish even Lobov. And I say that because it's bare knuckle. Now, for those of you who don't know, Paulie didn't have a lot of knockouts in his career, but he was fighting A1 list fighters. And Lobov is he's a UFC level fighter. He's a world-class UFC fighter. You got to give that to him. You got to give it to him. He's a world-class MMA fighter. However, he would be going in the realm of boxing against Malignaggi. Now, if it was an MMA fight, of course we give it to Lobov. No questions asked. Paulie doesn't know anything about MMA, but Artem would be stepping into Malignaggi's world. And if you step into another world-class fighter's world, if you're going to, any combative arts, if you're going to go in Taekwondo versus the best Taekwondo guy in the world, or one of the best, or you're going to go in kickboxing against a kickboxer, a world champion kickboxer, or a former world champion kickboxer, or you're going to go into wrestling versus a world champion freestyle wrestler. In freestyle wrestling, you're going to lose. Okay? I mean, you might put up a good fight. You might put up something interesting for the fans to watch. However, nonetheless, that's his world. That's his realm. He grew up there. He knows the ins and outs of that game. He's likely to win. So that's just the way it is. Artem's an MMA fighter. Malignaggi's a boxer. They would be fighting in boxing. All right, guys. Any other questions on this bare knuckle boxing event? BKB is not like actual boxing. It's way different. That's from the guard. I get what you're saying from there. You're probably saying that because there's no glove, that Artem's not really fighting Malignaggi in boxing. It's a totally different sport. I would have to disagree with you. I mean, it's still boxing. They have the word boxing, and it's bare knuckle boxing. We can't say it's totally irrelevant to boxing. I would agree with you that the mechanics are going to be different. I think a lot of the peekaboo fighters, fighters who cover up and then punch, like Winky Wright, they cover up and then they punch. We call them peekaboo fighters. I don't think that works as well in bare knuckle boxing. Winky Wright was world champion, a legitimate world champion in the boxing world, and he did the peekaboo style, covering up and firing back, covering beautiful defensive work in boxing with 8-ounce, 10-ounce gloves. Without a glove, in my opinion, no, it falls short. We don't see many peekaboo styles in MMA for that reason. However, for those of you who are not familiar with Malignaggi was the opposite of a peekaboo fighter, complete opposite. He was a slick counterpuncher with lots of footwork and head movement and mobility and bending at the waist and taking angles. He was very hard to hit. He was known for being very hard to hit, and he rarely covered up. He would cover up every so often. Obviously, every boxer does, but rarely. He did not rely on the gloves for his defensive maneuvers. Now, for those of you who know Lobov puts his hands down. He plays the same game as Malignaggi. I just think that Malignaggi plays that game at another level. That's just my one Artem was learning wrestling and counter wrestling and grappling and counter grappling and chokes and arm bars. Malignaggi was just boxing. So there was a lot of years of Artem's training that were that were dedicated to jiu-jitsu and wrestling. They have to because he's doing MMA and kicking, don't forget, and elbowing and kneeing. So Malignaggi's training is concentrated in punching, and his style, in my opinion, is going to convert well to bare knuckle boxing. In my opinion, his style is going to convert well to bare knuckle boxing. Again, who knows? You're right. It's bare knuckle. One shot. One shot could be the night. I agree with you. The chances of getting knocked out with one punch, in my opinion, are greater. In my opinion. So I agree with you there. But I wouldn't say it's a totally different sport. I would not say that. All right, let's go. Let's keep up on these fights. Elbow guard against bare knuckle. Yeah, I think it would make sense, but I don't think you're allowed to block with your elbow. If you get punched on the elbow, you're going to break your opponent's hand. I think in boxing it's illegal. I'm sure that in bare knuckle boxing it's illegal. Don't quote me on that because I'm not familiar with the rules. But if a guy had his elbow up, I'm pretty sure a competent referee who knows boxing can tell him, hey, put that elbow down. You're not allowed to flare your elbows against in boxing. Why? Because it leads to a lot of cuts, right? People walk into cuts. So it's completely illegal. Lobov, no real head movement. Well, he did a nice slip in round one and came back. I think it was with an uppercut or a right hand. I can't remember. Jason Knight threw a jab, and he kind of did a beautiful slip and counter punch. I thought it was really, really well done. So you're right. At one point in the fight, he did stop moving his head. I would agree with you. But he has shown good head movement in the past. All right. So Rampage in BKB. Is Rampage, that's from Thanos Magnus, is Rampage in bare knuckle boxing now? Wow, that would be very, very interesting. I wouldn't want to be the guy who's fighting him. He's a great puncher, very powerful guy. He's the kind of guy who's built for bare knuckle boxing. If he is signed, that would be something to watch. Okay, guys. So if we had enough with bare knuckle boxing, and we're well over an hour here, I did say I would make a longer podcast because I've been away. So I want to keep up with you guys. Guys, special thank you to Gym Kings, new sponsor for this channel. Thank you. Keeps the channel running. It keeps the good times flowing. jujiclub.com. Go there, buy a mug, buy a t-shirt, support this channel, buy an instructional video. I got my 2 instructional videos that are getting phenomenal reviews. Thank you for everybody who bought it. Support this channel. And of course, Monster Energy Drink. Shout out to Monster Energy Drink who supports this channel as well. And who else we got? timtam.tech. Make sure you go and get your timtam, guys. Don't even think about it. If you train, get a timtam. You know the coach knows best. Get yourself a timtam. You won't regret it. The coach gives you his word. Okay, what about TJ Dillashaw? Now, this is a bit of a touchy subject. Okay, number one. On a personal level, I really like TJ. I've trained with him in the past. We've trained together 2 or 3 times. And for one time, he spent a month at Tristar with me. I think it was like a month or 2 weeks. I can't remember, but really nice kid. I get along with him really well. The guys at the gym love him. He's a sweet guy. I love Bang Ludwig. I've always admired Bang. From his fighting career all the way to his coaching career, I admire the man greatly. I admire TJ. Phenomenal fighter, intelligent, technical. However, he tested positive for EPO. And you guys know how I feel about PEDs. I believe that if you're on PEDs, you should only fight other fighters on PED. That's it. Like, be open about it. Like, we know certain fighters on PEDs. They have exemptions. Let them fight other guys with exemptions. I don't want to fight a guy who's on a PED and his doctor, who's his buddy, who tells him, oh, you're grouchy and your testosterone is low. Of course your testosterone is low. You're training 24 hours a day like the rest of us. Adequate rest and diet, your testosterone is going to go back up to normal, just like everybody else. I don't believe in these guys who say that, oh, I'm only going to be at a normal level. I'm taking synthetic testosterone, but I'm taking it at a normal level. Don't worry, guys. I'm never going to take more than I should. That's a lie. I'm not going to trust you with that. If you have any synthetic drug in your system, for me, you're out. You're not healthy enough to fight, then don't fight. For me, you're out. Okay. Now, with that said, if you do get busted, because when you sign your contract, you're agreeing that you're not on any substance. It says it in the contract. Okay, you know You're not supposed to be on any substance. You and your opponent have a gentleman's agreement. Now, do people lie and cheat? Yes, they do. And then they win their fights and they raise their hands. For me, you're a total fraud, guys. It's a lie. It's a fraud. And I understand there's pressure. And I understand there's a lot on the line. But for me, you didn't win. And for me, if you get caught once, in my opinion, we got to be banned you for life. And all your wins and all your credentials and everything you've ever won, your money, everything, it's all up for grabs. It has to be refunded. The other guy should have been world champion. The other guy should have won that money. The other guy should have got his purse. I believe there are a lot of guys still playing the odds. They're beating the tests. They're doing all sorts of things. Because don't forget, they don't test you for everything under the sun. They just test you for a handful of things. I don't know exactly even how many substances they test you for, but they cannot test you for every single substance. Just because you pass the test doesn't mean you're not taking illegal substances. And there are a lot of ways that these guys try to get around the tests. Now, in my opinion, if you get busted, that's it. That's it. You're done. You've broken the honor system. You have broken the honor system. Now, I know there are a lot of guys who used to have exemptions. There are a lot of guys, like I've trained guys who used to have an exemption. They did it legally. They were allowed to take these substances. Okay, I'm not going to name names, but I've worked with certain high-profile individuals. Okay, maybe honestly just one. And they had an exemption. Now the exemption is taken away. Okay, we're not doing that anymore. And now, okay, I started working with this fighter. And he was fighting at a time where it was allowed. The other guy was on it. He's on it. And now there's no more of that. And now he's fighting a guy who used to be on it, and he's not on it anymore. It's fair. And that's why I tell my fighters, like if two guys are on it, like for instance, we know certain fighters are in other leagues, they're on it. They know. We know the organization knows, the opponents know. They both know they're on it. For me, those guys agreed to do it. That's their business. They want to do that. That's their business. What I don't agree on is two guys agreeing not to be on it. And one of them is on it. And UFC is a clean league. There's no games. Supposedly, everybody's clean. Now, listen, I've trained every fighter I've ever trained. I've never had one fighter come up to me and say, Coach, I'm thinking about doing PEDs. If anybody's ever done it under my tutelage, they've done it without me knowing. If anybody has ever done it under my tutelage, they have done it without me knowing. Now, a long time ago, I had a fighter. A long time ago, one fighter, I'm not going to name his name, one fighter in my whole career get tested positive. In my whole career as a coach. And when I heard this, I was surprised that this fighter I didn't know. I was completely oblivious to it. I had no idea that this fighter was taking a substance. Now, this fighter had cracked under the pressure. When he cracked, I thought what's the meaning of this? And look, they just caught him. The guy was doing it. He came clean. He apologized because I cracked under the pressure and I did this substance. Now, I won't name the fighter's name. This was a long time ago. I don't work with this fighter anymore. Me and this fighter do not work together anymore. We stopped working together for a long time. However, that was the first time it ever happened to me, and the only time, and this is before USADA. So I was very shocked. I gave the fighter a lecture. I said, look, you always put your health first. You don't know what you're doing with these things. You can develop all sorts of problems later on. Don't trust these people. These people are not doctors. They're giving you advice. They don't know what they're talking about. You're a healthy young man. You don't need these things. If you win, it's a fraud. Even if you win, so what? You cheated. It's not an honorable victory. It's not a real victory. You're going to have to live with that. And this was my position. And it'll always be my position. It will always be my position. Now, look, we all loved Pride. The event Pride FC. In Pride, the fighters were on it. According to, the people I know who know the ins and outs of Pride. In the contract of Pride, they tell you they won't test you. And those fighters were fighting like every few months, like every 8 weeks, 10 weeks. They were back in there in wars after war. We know those fighters were on PEDs. But in my opinion, there were two fighters on PEDs. Okay, I don't think anybody here is going to fall off their chair if I accuse Vanderlei Silva of being on PEDs throughout his career. However, in my opinion, he was fighting other fighters on PEDs. I think PEDs should be out of the sport. Why? Because these fighters, it's going to be an arms race. Okay, this is the amount my strength coach and doctor allowed me, or recommended to me, I'm going to take this much. Why? Because I want my edge. And the other guy knows you're taking this much, and he's going to want to take this much. And it's going to be a race to who could take more. And these guys are just going to kill themselves. Literally, they're going to do something crazy, lose their minds, have a heart attack, poison their livers, have all sorts of side effects later on in life. And it's going to be a black eye to the sport. And one day we might even horrifically, we might even have a Chris Benoit situation. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say, look, Chris Benoit had to do with concussions. Yes, but mixing concussions or head injuries, forgive me, excuse me, with PEDs, we don't know what that does. Okay, there are no controlled studies to tell us. There are no double-blind controlled studies to tell us what repeated blows to the head and PEDs, mixing those two together, what it does. Okay, obviously that'll be unethical study. we can never have such a study. However, we can speculate nonetheless that it's not a great thing to do, right? I don't think anybody would argue that point. Okay, so in my opinion, PEDs should be wiped out completely. If you ever get caught in PEDs in a clean league like UFC, in my opinion, you're banned for life. All his championship fights, no contest. Why would we assume that you didn't do it in your past fights when we catch you in this one? Don't forget, they're playing the odds. They're running around. They're trying to not get caught for a certain drug. They're hoping not to be tested. They're filtering their system. They're doing all sorts of things to protect themselves from being tested. There are all sorts of things people do to provide USADA with clean hair, blood, and urine. Excuse me, not hair. They don't take hair. They take blood and urine. So, blood, hair, and urine would be the best way to go, because hair also can make it more difficult to pass the test. So, I'm losing my voice here, guys, so I'm going to try to keep this concise. You shouldn't just be fined money. You should be taken away out of the league. 2 years is not enough, in my opinion. And I love TJ, and I hate to say this. I respect the kid. I love the kid. Maybe he folded under pressure. Maybe it's the only drug he ever did, which I highly doubt, by the way. Because EPO is a super highly dangerous drug. Like, it's not a starter kit drug. It's not. EPO, when you take EPO, you need an expert following you. You need to know what you're doing. Like, I've never met a guy taking EPO. It was always the drug we've heard, that's the most dangerous. It's like, if you take EPO, man, you better be like followed by experts. The guy giving you the EPO better be like a connoisseur. He better know everything about EPO, because supposedly you could die from a heart attack. Again, I'm not an expert in these topics, but from what I've heard, it's the most dangerous drug, like the drug you never want to experiment with. You never want to get wrong. Is EPO. So if he took EPO, for sure he took Anavar. For sure, the minimum, like that's the mildest drug, from what I understand. Okay, and I've never done these drugs at all. I've never recommended them. I've never given them to a fighter. I have worked with very few fighters that are known for PEDs. And again, I always did it with a strict code that they only ever fight somebody who's also on PEDs. Only. Or an ex-PED user. Only. These are my conditions. Like, when I work with these fighters, I tell them, look, I will never let you be on PEDs and fight some guy not on PEDs. That goes against what I do. And you guys can check my record. It's 100%. I live up to those words 100% of the time. Okay? So, fighters, in my opinion, fighters who had an exemption, they did it within the rules. So if they got off it, they're clean. So if you know, like Chael Sonnen had an exemption. Certain fighters had an exemption for years. I felt that the state was being unfair, but the fighter was within the rules. So those guys, I give them a pass, even though I don't agree with the state. Then the state later on changed its mind, said, look, we're not giving any more exemptions. It's too hard to control. Fighters, we had a situation where a fighter came in too high on PEDs, but he had an exemption. It ruined the main event. I don't want to name his name, let's leave it buried. Okay. He came in too high, but he's like, oh no, I was just tapering off, and I maybe gave myself too much of a little dose, and I broke the allowance. There shouldn't be any allowance, but the state gave him an allowance. He came in a little bit over that allowance, fights off, night's ruined, big fiasco. But the fighter was doing it within the rules. So, the Dillashaw situation is very different. Dillashaw broke the rules 100%. 100% he broke the rules. He cheated, he lied. And look, let's use the word that belongs in this situation that fits the situation perfectly. It's fraudulent. I don't believe he started off with EPO just for his last fight. No way. His teammate, Cody Garbrandt, accused him publicly at their press conference. He said, look, you're the one who taught the whole team how to do it. That's literally, I'm paraphrasing here, but that's literally what he said. He said, you're the one, you're on everything. You taught the whole team how to do it. Now it incriminates TJ and the whole team. That was the irony of it all. But nonetheless, there's an eyewitness testimony to somebody who says, we know you do it. Now, make of that what you will. We now have scientific evidence that the man cheated. And for me, if you cheated for that fight, we have to presume also, we can no longer give you the benefit of the doubt. We gave him the benefit of the doubt when we had an eyewitness testimony from Cody Garbrandt saying that he takes substances. Cody Garbrandt says he takes everything. Those were his words. He takes everything. And Dillashaw was saying, yeah, I've been tested all these tests, but I'm taking everything. Many fighters, many athletes have been tested and later on turned out to be drug users. Most famously, Lance Armstrong. Most famously. So, you could be the most tested athlete in the world like Armstrong was and still be doing substances. Okay, so the tests are not 100%. You got caught red-handed. In my opinion, the punishment is not enough. Once you get caught and you're doing something illegal, you got to be banned for life. Guys, this sport is too dangerous already. Now we're going to put in illegal substances, PEDs. We're going to make these guys superhuman. We're going to make these guys ultra dangerous. Already the health risk is too much. Already. We got to keep somebody from getting hurt. Could you imagine? Imagine this scenario, okay? This is a morbid scenario. Imagine. People die in every sport. People die playing basketball, soccer, hockey. It's a stress on the heart. The guy had maybe a heart malfunction, a heart abnormality and dies. Sometimes people, one kid a few years ago in Quebec, he died playing hockey. He got a stick to the chest and went under his shoulder pads and kind of snuck in and hit him in the heart. Literally, just a strike to the heart. He fell on the ice and died. Now, did he have an abnormality to the heart? I can't remember the details of the case. Okay, but unfortunately, this kid got literally a stick to the heart. And that blow to the heart killed him. He fell on the ice and died. A young kid. Very tragic story. Now, in MMA, imagine there was a death. And there's been deaths in MMA. Imagine UFC, there's a death. And in that death, God forbid, there's a death in UFC. The guy who killed him tests positive for steroids. This could be the end of the sport. Now, more tragically, obviously, somebody died. So I'm not worried about the sport. I'm worried about somebody dying, of course. But we want to prevent the death because then you're never going to be able to separate the illegality of the steroid use. You're going to charge that fighter with murder. You have to. He did something illegal. Some of you are going to say, oh, it wasn't due to PEDs. You don't know that. He brought in an illegal variable into this fight. He brought in an illegal, harmful variable. You don't know that. In my opinion, that's a murder. In my opinion, guys, I know a lot of you guys are going to be outraged of what I'm saying. You're wrong. Think about it when you're quiet moments. You're completely wrong. Now, a lot of you are going to be like, oh, no, it's not like that. And it doesn't really help you with technique. That's just garbage. That's just foolish talk. That's foolish. You don't know anything about fighting. You don't know anything. Guys, there's two types of people who have that position. One, guys who do PEDs. They do PEDs. That's why they say that. And two, guys who just don't know anything about fighting. Guys who just don't know anything about fighting. Imagine you're going to fight. And the day before your fight, I tell you, hey, this guy's been doing PEDs. The guy you're fighting tomorrow, he's been doing PEDs for years. Oh, yeah, his testosterone level is like superhuman. Good luck tomorrow. You'd be like, hey, that's unfair. All of a sudden, you'd get very philosophical about PEDs. You'd be like, hey, that's unfair. That's not right. He shouldn't be allowed that advantage. This is outrageous. This is not, my health is on the line. All of a sudden, you have mental clarity. All of a sudden, because now your skin is on the line. But when you're putting these young kids in there, who don't know anything about PEDs, who are not experts in these situations, who might not know that they're putting their life at risk. Some of them do, obviously, but some of them don't. Some of them are just young and they don't even know what PEDs are. They've never come across it. They're young kids. They're training in their gym. They're fighting. They're training. They're surrounded by natural fighters. And then one day they come across a fighter who's on a lot of PEDs and they don't know it. It's happened. Definitely it's happened. Okay. In my opinion, the state has to protect them from such a thing. A great example of this is Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz fought Anderson Silva 9 days before Anderson Silva fight. Anderson Silva tested positive for an illegal substance. The state knew about it. From what I understand, they lost their paperwork in the shuffle or whatever. And the fight happened nonetheless. Now, if I remember correctly, they caught him before. Nick Diaz could have had a major recourse legally against the state. Legally. He could have had a major recourse. He could have been like, you know what? Imagine Nick Diaz got severely injured in that fight. Now, he didn't. He actually put up a really good fight. Went 5 rounds with him. However, imagine he went to the hospital that night. Imagine he got badly hurt. And then we find out later that Anderson Silva was on PEDs. In my opinion, the state has to do a better job protecting the fighters. I think UFC and USADA are doing their best. You know, it's not easy. There are always going to be cheaters. But when you catch a cheater, you got to make an example of him. That's it. He's done. And I don't care if you took a tainted supplement. I don't even care. That's how strict I am. I don't even care if it was a tainted supplement. Why? If you're a world champion, if you're an elite fighter, you take a supplement, you better know what's in there. You take a certified supplement. You take a supplement that's certified by a third party. They have a little sticker on it. It's a known company. Don't go buy a gas station pill. You don't know what's in a gas station pill. You go to a major pharmaceutical company. If you need those type of pills, you go to Pfizer, my friend. You don't go to some gas station company and swallow some pills. You're a world champion. You're having your blood tested on a regular basis. You're having your urine tested on a regular basis. And you're telling me you didn't think twice before you put something in your system? I don't believe you. I personally don't believe you. I think that's absurd. You can afford to buy a certified substance, supplement. There are supplements that certify what's in the canister and it's put on there. If I get tested positive and you're a known company, you're a big company, and you certified me that there were no illegal substances in this, I have recourse against you. I could sue the daylights out of you. If you're some no-name brand and I catch you and you ruin one of my tests, your brand, I test positive because I took one of your gas station pills. There's nothing I can do. I can try to sue you. You're gonna go bankrupt. You're a nothing company. You've been open for a year. You've been operating for a year. There's nothing to sue you for. Okay, so a real smart. You don't have to be that smart. An honest person knows he's getting his blood tested. He won't put anything that's foreign in his body. In my opinion, it's a big scam. Okay, in my opinion, it's just a big scam. I just think there's a ways to cheat. And that's one way. A lot of these companies that make protein powder, it's just a front. They're selling PEDs. They're using the same machines to make their PEDs. And they sell these powders and these supplements as a front. So for sure their stuff is contaminated. If a fighter is taking their drugs, their illegal drugs, and one day he gets busted, they're going to tell him, hey, just tell them to go check our canisters. They're full of contamination. And sales don't go down. When a company's caught for contaminated substance in their supplements, their sales go up. People want their contaminated substances. Their sales go up. They don't go down. So it's a win-win for them. It's a win-win. The fighter's protected because they're supplements. You can always blame the supplement. I just don't believe it, guys. I just don't believe it. I think if you're a world champion, you're an elite fighter, you don't put anything in your body that's illegal. And if it happened to one of my fighters, I would give him an earful. It could be that you got caught taking a supplement that was contaminated, but that's your fault. I still blame you. If you have something illegal in your supplement, if it happens to one of my fighters in the future, guys, I will remain true to my word. I will tell my fighter, it's your fault. It is really your fault. You should have known better. Never take anything in your body. Never put anything in your body that you don't know what's in there. If it's sketchy, don't put it in your body. There are 1,001 ways to get your supplements. Buy Joe Rogan supplements, for God's sakes. If you get contaminated, I would be shocked. Okay, Joe Rogan supplements. I'm not punching them in here because I like the guy or he gives me supplements. I think his supplements are great. That's a trustworthy name brand. You hear it all the time. There has to be a level of trust. I would go on Joe's podcast and be like, hey, Joe, why is your stuff getting me tested positive? And that's something I would trust. That's a supplement I would trust. However, I would bet the house. Okay, I'm not a gambling man, but I would bet the house that on its supplements are clean, certified. I would trust because I trust that name. If you're taking some gas station supplement, no name brand, and you're an elite fighter, I don't trust it. I think it's not trustworthy. So, if you're a UFC fighter, hit up Joe for a good discount. Okay, get your supplements there. Don't give us this. And by the way, before you take a supplement, you're supposed to message USADA and tell them, hey, I'm taking these pills or I'm taking these powders. Is this okay? And they give you the okay. You tell them the brand. You send them the label. And then if you get caught, you be like, hey, you guys told me it was okay. And now all of a sudden this is tainted. You got to do your due diligence. You got to go through your due diligence. You got to be responsible. You got to be smart about it. You're a world-class fighter, for goodness sake. You're fighting for world titles. You're fighting in these epic events. You can't be that sloppy. Okay, you can't be that sloppy. So in my opinion, that's my position. Joe TRTs himself. That's from Jonathan Jones. Now, from what I understand, Joe has come about. He said he's used PEDs, but he's not a professional fighter. He's not fighting. I don't care if you use PEDs if you think that it's healthy for you, if you think that it's going to keep you in better shape. That's your business. Okay, but if you're fighting, I have a problem with it because you're putting somebody else's health on the line. Okay, so Devin Bryan agrees. Yeah, no excuses. Do your homework. Thank you, Devin. I agree with that. There is no rooms for PEDs. Guys, this is a dangerous sport we're playing. It's a tough game. People's health and careers on the line. You can't cheat like this. Okay, I really like TJ. I don't want to step on him. I don't want to kick him when he's down. But in my opinion, guys, with all due respect, he's not a legitimate world champion. He's not. Because he has tainted all his wins. And I don't think he needed PEDs to be world champion. That's the saddest thing of it all. I think he's a brilliant fighter. He's put in all those years of hard work. But for me, it's all by the wayside. And the same goes for Anderson Silva. The same goes for every world champion that's ever been tested positive. For me, you are not a legitimate champ. If you win Olympic gold and you get tested positive, I don't care if you won 2 Olympics in a row. Or I don't care how many Tour de France's you win. If you get tested for one of them, that's it, you're done. From what my understanding, they strip you of everything. We got to bring that spirit into MMA. We have to, especially MMA. And it should come from the fighters. It's coming from UFC. UFC's brought in USADA. USADA's policing as best they can. From what I understand, they're doing their best job. But fighters should not accept this kind of behavior from other fighters. They really shouldn't. And coaches neither. And there's no way, in my opinion, there's no way TJ did this by himself. There is no way. I'm not an expert in these things, but EPO is a life and death type of drug. You are risking your life, man. And TJ, goodness sake, he's a family man. He should not risk his life. There's nothing worth risking your life. And I think as he grows older and wiser, he'll realize this. There are fighters or athletes that die at a young age. You hear about these young fighters having heart attacks, or ex-fighters or coaches or ex-coaches or whatnot dying from heart attacks. It's not normal to die from a heart attack in your 40s. It's not normal. Unless you have a severe genetic abnormality. Your father died from a heart attack, and your grandfather died from a heart attack, and so on. And you have a genetic abnormality. Because, I train doctors, we talk about, I know PhDs, we sit around, we talk, ask them questions. That's what they tell me, dying at that age. Because I ask them, how come this athlete died? Not necessarily in MMA. They'll tell you, there could be genetic abnormalities, yes. However, a lot of times it's substance abuse. Substance abuse can be a serious candidate for death. It can lead to your death. I used it for jiu-jitsu. Definitely helps. That's from Joe D's. Joe, I hope you're not talking about PEDs. There are a lot of PEDs in jiu-jitsu. Don't get me started on PEDs in jiu-jitsu. I really hope you're joking there, because it's not worth. It's not worth. There's no money there's very little money in jiu-jitsu unless you're doing it at a world-class level. Because I see a lot of local guys doing PEDs just to do jiu-jitsu. I know guys who don't do sports do a lot of PEDs, just for the vanity, just for the look. In my opinion, you're gambling with your health. You might be taking away 20 years off your life. And once you get older and wiser, you're going to regret it immensely. Immensely. And, what else we got here? Oh, you're talking about nootropics. Okay, I just recently learned about nootropics. I just didn't know about that term. Yes, I like nootropics. I do use them. So nootropics are good. Okay, healthy for the brain. Do nootropics. Nootropics are healthy. If you get a known brand, Joe, I recommend Joe's Nootropics. He sent me them for free. Good stuff. Get that alpha brain stuff. It's good stuff. It's healthy for the brain. In my opinion, I use it every so often, and I like it. However, it's legal. Okay, so use things that are legal. Only things that are legal. Do you think higher salaries would result in less PD use? I don't know. Yeah, maybe, because I think there's such a dramatic difference in your salary if you lose a fight. So I think there's a lot of pressure. I understand the pressure these young kids have. I get it. They're going into these high-profile fights. The whole world is watching. They really, really want to win. And I can understand a young man might crack under the pressure. A lot of people were criticizing TJ's coach who said, look, he fell victim to the pressure. He's a fallen soldier. I get the critiques on both sides. I get the fact that people are saying that's an absurd excuse. But I also get what this coach is trying to say. There is a tremendous amount of mental pressure. But that's part of the game. The other guy is doing it natural. I believe Henry Cejudo, in my opinion, is totally natural. I believe it. Look, if he gets busted tomorrow, I'll be surprised. He's a guy I would be shocked. He went through that mental pressure. He did it. He did it. He went through it. That's part of the battle. That's part of the fight. If you yield to that pressure, you don't deserve the victory. Now, TJ didn't get the victory, but if he did, he wouldn't deserve it. That's just my opinion on that. It's part of that pressure. That's why I believe that weed is also should be illegal. Why? Because it helps alleviate the mental pressure. People say, oh, it's not a performance-enhancing drug. One, it really helps with the mental pressure. I've never done it, but I assume that's why they do it. Okay? It might be a faulty assumption. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But I assume that's why they do it. That's, they say, certain fighters have social anxiety and that's why they do it. Maybe. I don't know. Okay? But two, also, supposedly numbs the pain. Like, you can go through more pain. That's an advantage in a fight. Now, again, I'm not an expert on these things. I've never fought under the influence. I've never sparred under the influence. So I don't know. Okay? Okay, what else you got here? So alcohol should be too. That's absurd code. That's from Jonathan Jones. I don't think you should be allowed to drink alcohol before your fight. I think it's too dangerous. We don't know what that would do to you. I think, okay, it's legal to take alcohol the night before, but that's just the way, that's where the state draws the line. All right, so listen, the state drew a line. There's a judgment call to be made. Somewhere we have to draw the line. Because what's next? Coffee's a drug. Sugar's a drug. I get what you're saying. It's a shades of gray all around. I'm with you on that. I get it. But we have to appoint a mediator, the state in this case, to draw a line somewhere and say, look, alcohol legal, marijuana illegal. I get it. There's a draw, and it's a subjective line that had to be drawn. But when we sign our contracts, we all agreeing that the mediator, the state in this scenario, drew the line, and we're going to respect their line. We agreed to it. I gave you my word. You gave me your word. If you want to have alcoholic beverage the night before the fight, that's legal. If you want to have weed the night before the fight, it's illegal. So there's the line. I agree. It's subjective. Guys, don't forget, we're only talking about the illegal PD usage of Dillashaw. We're going to end on that. I might try to end it on a more positive note. And then we'll end the show on that. Okay, but we're closing in on an hour 45 minutes here. So let's get the last few shots in. You need to ease your critics on weed for us. That's from Devin O'Brien. Listen, I'm not criticizing people using weed. I'm criticizing the people using weed in a fight. Okay, so they're smoking the weed during the day of the fight or the night of the fight or the week of the fight to ease their nerves or to whatever, get in their zone. I don't believe that that's allowed, because in competition, that disqualifies you. Okay, so in competition testing, according to the rules, from what I remember now, it's in competition testing. It's illegal. The state drew that line. You signed your contract. You said you're going to respect those rules. So look, if you want to smoke weed recreationally, that's your business. I personally don't recommend it, because I feel that the long-term use can affect your mind. I don't know that for a fact. I'm not trying to tell you I'm an expert in this situation, but I have come across people who are long-term weed users, and I feel that there's a common denominator. Again, I'm not basing this on any study. I'm just saying that I feel like maybe it's different types of weed. Maybe there's a whole science to it that I'm not aware. And I'm sure that there is. I'm sure they're out there. There are weed experts. And I'm sure there's even studies on it. Okay. But I just feel like I don't need it. Okay. I feel like my mind is in a place where I really don't need it. My mind can give me, I don't want to rely on it. I don't want my mind to be altered. I want my mind to be thinking clearly at all times. And I feel that just by thinking really profoundly about things, I can get as high or higher than any other human being and on any substance, in my opinion. Okay, but that's a very personal experience, and I think that if you have the mind, a trained mind, a very trained mind, and as Bertrand Russell would say, an advanced mind, I think you don't need it. You just don't need it. So I'd rather be there. I'd rather have my thoughts there than anywhere else. Why are you not being explicit? That's from Knuckle. Not being explicit about what? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Did GSP retire because of USADA became much better? That's from Table Turn. No, at all. George was the first one to do self-testing. Don't forget, George did self-testing with Vada 2 or 3 times before USADA came in, and he did the USADA. George is very pro-testing. Until this day, I will allow anybody, and George will allow, and we accept, okay, like me and George have talked about this, that we challenge anybody openly. Like he's given me, he's given me the mandate to challenge anybody to test blood, hair, and urine anytime they want. Anytime they want. Even now, if they're a legitimate testing company, test anytime, blood, hair, and urine at any point, anytime. So that's how strongly me and George feel about PEDs. Okay, guys. With that said, listen, I don't want to kick TJ while he's down. I have a tremendous respect for his ability. However, this was a bad decision, and I feel it's irreversible. In my opinion, it's irreversible. I don't care if he comes back to become world champion. In my opinion, it's irreversible. There was a study in the University of Toronto, and they showed that PEDs give you an irreversible gains. Irreversible. They give you irreversible gains. And one thing about TJ, if you ever work with TJ, he's a workhorse. He can work all day, all night, never stop. All that work is not possible if he wasn't on PEDs. All that work, he would have to go through muscular synthesis like everybody else. He would need a recovery period. However, when you're on substances, that recovery period is greatly shortened. You could do more training. You can have more experience. You can accelerate your growth in terms of skill. Imagine I'm working 8 hours a day on the mat instead of 4. Who's going to be better after a year of training? I'm going to be way better than you. I'm going to have more experience, legitimately skilled. However, I would have never reached this level of experience. I would have had a sore knee. I would have had a sore neck. I would have been feeling really weak the next day. My muscles need a rest. I would be going through these natural, organic phases of training. Whereas you can supercharge these phases. You can accelerate these phases because it's stress plus recovery equals adaptation. That process, there's a time cost to that process. You have to stress the body with training, then you have to allow recovery, and then you'll experience adaptation. And now, of course, this cycle will shorten itself the more experienced you are in training. You recover from workouts faster because your body's more efficient at recovering because it can handle a higher level of stress now. However, on PEDs, you can tolerate a much higher level of stress. So you're training at higher intensities, higher volumes, you're going to get a lot better. Okay, so for those of you who think that PEDs don't make a difference, I'm sorry, you're foolish. You're inexperienced. You're inexperienced when it comes to martial arts. My apologies, okay, but you're inexperienced. So with all due respect, I have to strongly disagree. All right, guys, with that said, I do wish TG the best, okay, and I really hope he hears me loud and clear. Health first, especially since you're a family man now. EPO is a highly dangerous drug. You're a fighter I like personally. Health first. You're a family man now. You have to be there for your family, not just your children, not just your child, but your family, your parents, your wife. These drugs can take years and years off your life. So I really hope you put health above all, above fighting. But sadly, I have to say that, I have to put an asterisk on all your wins. Unfortunately, for me, it's been tainted irreversibly. Okay, guys, now let's end up on a happier note. We had an hour, 51 seconds. I did this podcast extra long. We had crashes in this podcast. Okay, this podcast went down twice. So for all of you who are confused about what was going on during this podcast, we had a power failure, then like a stream got cut off. I don't know what happened. I also messed up the button pushing early on, so my apologies for that. Again, I deserve to be whipped, guys. I agree. I deserved to be literally whipped for my incompetence in button pushing. My apologies. Let's end up on a happier note, positive note, and wrap this one up. Okay, I kept this podcast extra long because I've been behind, and plus we had crashes. Blessings from Turkey. Thank you, O'Brien. Thank you, my friend. Blessings to you as well. Thank you very much. No more talk about PEDs, guys. Let's end up on a positive note. Please, I'm getting lightheaded. I'm fasting, drinking coffee here. And you guys got me going. Excuse me. You guys got me going really intense here. Coach, my super chat. Yes, there is a super chat. Thank you for... Coach, just curious, but what conspiracy theories do you believe in? Boom! Canada's George with the slam dunk. What a great... what a great question to end up on. Like, before I answer that question, guys, give me your favorite conspiracy theories. Please do give me your favorite conspiracy theories. Now, look, like everybody else, I love a good conspiracy theory, and I want to see evidence. I want to see hardcore evidence. And one man I love talking to about conspiracy theories, and I only ever did it once with him. Once upon a time, I bumped into Joe Rogan at the airport, and we had breakfast together. And I was asking him about, certain things about conspiracies and whatnot. And dude, he knows so much. And I'm sure you guys have heard him on his show, but dude, he knows so much about the ins and outs of conspiracy theories. And the next time I'm on his show, I'm going to ask him, let's do a segment on that. Because this guy is, he is well versed in the conspiracy theories. Now, a lot of you guys are flashing 9/11. Let me give you my thoughts on 9/11. There are a lot of great points. I've seen the loose change. I haven't seen it. For those of you who don't know, there's a famous documentary called Loose Change. All the things that don't add up, supposedly don't add up about 9/11. Now, 9/11 is a very tragic event, okay? It's a black eye to humanity. It's a black eye to humanity. It's a black eye to civilization. We are in the civilized world, yet the civilized world looked like a war zone. Now, of course, I'm very anti-violence. I'm very anti... the death of civilians is never correct under any circumstance. But that's not the topic for the day, okay? I just want to make sure that we're all aware that I don't want to make light of 9/11 or any other killing of civilians, okay? But there are a lot of things that seemed strange. And one of them was Building 7, Okay, so for those of you who don't know, this is the one thing that bothered me most about all the conspiracy theories regarding 9/11. And again, I'm not an expert in buildings. Okay, I'm not an architect. I don't know anything about buildings. However, one point that documentary made that was really troubling to me, very troubling to me, was that when the two towers fell, there was a third tower called Building 7 that also collapsed. That building was just on fire. It didn't get hit by any plane. It caught on fire. And we know buildings go on fire. Many buildings have been on fire. Many modern buildings have caught on fire. They never collapse. Why did Building 7 collapse? Now, in that documentary, or I think it was in another documentary, the owner of that building said, look, it was on fire, so we decided to pull it. And pull it is a term they were claiming. This is the argument, okay? Pulling is a term of people who demolish buildings via detonation. And they were like, look, this is an interview with the owner of that building saying, look, it was on fire, so we decided to pull it. What do you mean decided to pull it? It takes a lot of planning to pull a building, demolish a building via dynamite, via explosion. You have to do a lot of work. It's not just, hey, push a button. Was that building wired with explosives already? Now, that's a massive claim. Think about it. If you're going to wire a building with explosives, people are working in that building every day. They're going to see people wiring the building. They're going to see construction. They're going to report, hey, for months we saw these guys with hard hats walking in and out. You would have to wire that building secretly. You have to do it in the middle of the night when it's closed, but then you have the cleaners. I mean, I could see arguments both sides. Because people say, one claim is that the building fell at free fall speed. And only a building being detonated falls at free fall speed. Now, I don't know if it actually did fall at free fall speed. I don't accept that premise per se. And I don't know what a building would collapse like if it was hit by a giant airplane. I know that the architect of the Twin Towers said that it was meant to withstand multiple strikes by an airplane. But I don't believe you can know that until you test it. And I don't think we've ever tested that. To know that for sure, you'd have to build a building, crash an airplane into it, and you'd have to do it more than once to give me a satisfactory sample. Okay, so the fact that this has only ever happened once in history doesn't prove to us that, and I believe that the architect later on recanted his statement. But he said, no, it was built to resist multiple Boeing strikes. You can't really know that that's true. In my opinion, it's just unless we try it, we can't know. There are too many. There could be a variable nobody could foresee. So for me, the fact that the building collapsed is not proof that it was a conspiracy, that it was known. For me, it wasn't proof that it fell free fall speed. I don't know that. I don't know that for a fact that it fell free fall speed. Are there any reputable physicists out there and architects working together to figure out whether that makes any sense? The one glaring piece of evidence that actually gave me a severe doubt to the fact that it might have been a conspiracy. And again, I'm not making light of 9/11, okay? I'm just telling you guys I have an honest doubt, and I want to be honest here. And I don't want to turn 9/11 into like a fun conversation. It's not. It's not a fun conversation. It shouldn't be. However, the one thing that gave me doubt is the fact that Building 7 also collapsed. Now, I'd love to hear an explanation on why Building 7 collapsed. That's just something that till this day bothers me. Another thing that bothered me, that I found that was really strange, was the plane that supposedly crashed in the Pentagon. There were no major airplane pieces. There was no major engine. Where did the engine go? How did it evaporate? There were no giant chunks of airplane. Now, I might be wrong about this, but according to Loose Change, the documentary I watched, a lot of their evidence, in my opinion, I was just you don't know that. Maybe, possibly, it's circumstantial. We can't know. Give me something really troublesome. And I haven't watched that in documentary in many years. However, the two major pieces of evidence that really bothered me was one, Building 7 collapsed, and two, there were no major pieces of airplane crash. There were no major giant chunks of airplane debris. And we have many, many airplane crashes to compare it to. And there are always giant chunks. There are almost always giant chunks. And you would think an airplane crashing at that angle, at that velocity, it didn't crash at a 90-degree angle. There should be major chunks of airplanes parts. And there wasn't. So, does that prove that it was a conspiracy? By no means. No, by no means. At all. However, those are two pieces of evidence that bother me. Now, the moon landing also, I believe we went to the moon. I just think that the footage was also doctored. I think that some of the footage, they might have messed it up, or the camera, there's evidence that the camera couldn't have filmed that. I think that they may have doctored some of the footage. They may have, just to give us a view, a better look at what being on the moon was like. They recreated it, but I do believe they literally landed on the moon. I do believe that. Okay, guys, any other conspiracy or elements of these conspiracies I dropped? If the government can attempt something like the Bay of Pigs, they can definitely do something like 9/11. Look, it's true that governments have been caught with conspiracies in the past. For instance, when Berlin fell, they found documents that proved that there were conspiracies. Okay, there were German conspiracies. Conspiracies do exist. However, they're very hard to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. They are very, very hard to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I don't think that 9/11 is proven by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. There's just no hard proof. There are just things that I would say are troublesome. All right, guys, now we're talking about conspiracy theories. The pyramids. Pyramids are super interesting. I don't think that they're outside the realm of human ingenuity. They're super interesting, super fascinating, but not outside the realm of possibility. I don't believe they were built by aliens or anything like that. I believe they were built by man. Making up Saddam had a nuke was pretty bad. That's from Wesley Zipro. Well, if I remember correctly, the U.S. sold him all his missile capabilities. I believe it was in the 1980s. Again, don't quote me on that. This was something I heard Noam Chomsky discuss. Again, I'm not an expert in these things, but Noam Chomsky is, and he was saying, "Look, we already know what the man has." And when they ask, I'm forgetting the character's name, the vice president at the time, the Bush administration, where are his weapons of mass destruction? He said north, east, west, south. And I remember Noam Chomsky really criticizing that. He was just saying, look, the guy has no idea. He just wants to invade Iraq for these other alternative reasons. And when they go there, they're likely only going to find only what they've ever sold him. Now, I wouldn't put it past Saddam trying to build nukes. However, there was, from my understanding, again, this is borrowing from Noam Chomsky here. These are not my own ideas or research. He's saying, look, the UN did a thorough job. They found nothing. The UN did a thorough job. It's satisfactory. Iraq is under control. They have no weapons of mass destruction. There's no need to invade them. And still went in. They still needed. America still felt the need to invade them. And I remember Noam Chomsky being very adamant that this was really about the oil. What do you think about Alex Jones? That's from No Name. How weird is that? I get No Name asking me about Alex Jones. Very, very conspiracy-ish. Look, I think Alex Jones, I listened to his podcast with Rogan recently. He's an interesting guy. I used to watch his documentaries when I was young. They were fascinating. Look, I'm a very critical guy. I'm an extremely critical guy. Like, I can think as critically as you want to get. And look, don't forget, I have a background in philosophy. I can get you want to get to David Hume level critical thinking. You want to get to empirical British empiricism. If you want to get super critical, you want to get Cartesian doubt level. You want to go to Ghazalian doubt level. If you want to go to Ibn Arabi doubt level, if you want to go to that level, like I read those books and I actually enjoy them very much. They're too much for most people. Most people will, get to at most, the Thomas Kuhn level of doubt. That's it. That's enough for them. Don't go further than this. Let's stay pragmatic here, But when it comes to Alex Jones, for goodness sake, I think he's a very smart guy who knows a lot of information. He has so much information, but is also lost grips with reality. And I don't say this to disrespect him by any means. By any means, I don't mean this as a disrespect or an attack at all. I just find that when he was on Rogan, he was ranting, and all of a sudden he talks about these little people, or like, I can't remember the term. He used like elves or munchkins or something about like strange little. I'm like, whoa, nobody stopped him and asked him to define who are these people. It kind of just rolled over. Why? Because he said 7 or 8 crazy things, and it kind of gets thrown into the heap. And you're like, wait a second, he just made a few statements that were outrageous. I would have to stop and cross-examine him on literally every one of them. I would have liked to cross-examine him. Like, for instance, he made a claim that a certain body of government or future elects were saying, look, we want to kill babies. We want to kill babies. After they're born, we want to euthanize them. And then he plays this interview. And that's not what the interview was saying whatsoever. The interviewee was saying, look, it does happen that sometimes babies are born with severe deformities or abnormalities. They're going to have a life of pain and suffering. They have a severe mutation, genetic defect, severe, maybe a massive tumor in their head, and they're gonna live a few weeks and die, and it's gonna be agony. Like, they're giving you this less than 1% scenario. That was the context of what they were talking. They were not talking about, hey, we're gonna give you the right to do what you want with your body, and we're gonna let you abort children even after we're so liberal. We're gonna let you kill your babies even after they're born. That was not what the man was saying, because Alex Jones was saying, look, these people are so liberal. They're getting so crazy. They're going to let you even abort your child after the child is born. They're going to kill your babies. They're okay with killing babies. And he's getting all emotional. When you listen to that interview, his evidence, when they asked him, okay, give us your evidence, that's not the context of the speech whatsoever. They were talking about the less than 1%. Let's call it 0.001% of the time. A child may be born with an abnormality so severe that his chances of living a normal life is out the window. And the statesman was saying, look, we're going to leave that to the parents and the doctors. We're going to stay out of it. Why? Because the doctors are going to tell us, what's this child's life going to look like? Oh, well, if the doctor tells you, look, your child's going to have, like, at best, he's going to live for 6 months, and he's going to be in complete agony. Now the parents are going to have to make a decision. That's what the guy was trying to say. Look, because it does happen. Sometimes children are born with such abnormal body parts or abnormality or a tumor the size of a golf ball that their chances of living are like they're really low, and they're going to have tremendous pain. Now, who should decide if this child lives or dies? The statement was the man representing the state was saying, let doctors give their opinion, and let the parents and doctors decide. Let's stay out of it. This is such a touchy subject. Let's not leave it up to the state. That's what the man was saying. Is it right or wrong? I don't know. I'd have to think about it. However, I didn't think that guy was a bloodthirsty man who wants to kill babies. The statement that John Jones was giving us was supremely misleading. It was just absurdly misleading. It was not the context. The context was, and context is everything, guys. I don't care what statement you give me. I need the context. The guy was saying, look, it's a sad situation. We don't know what to do. It's confusing. It's a hard call. Let's let the parents and doctors decide. Parents are going to want to try to defy the odds. Maybe they're going to be like, look, we don't care. We're going to take our chances with the tumor. We're going to take our chances with these abnormalities. Yeah, I think they have the right to ask that. So, I think Alex Jones recently came out and said, look, he suffers from some psychosis. I think he says a lot of things that are true and honest, but I also think that the Sandy Hook thing was misleading, dishonest, or due to psychosis. I don't know which one it was, but it was completely untrue. It was far-fetched, absurd, and rightfully so. The parents were upset. I would have got supremely upset if I was a Sandy Hook victim. My goodness, my heart goes out to those people. Those people suffer greatly. To make light of it is evil. It's evil. You have no evidence of that. He was being provocative. He was being, he was catching headlines. He was saying things without evidence. And that for me is a crime. Okay. He should have, I don't know if he got punished for that, but that's just too much. Nobody can defend. It's indefensible. It's indefensible. So I think he paid for it. I think he's still paying for it. I think, he got deplatformed. I think it made sense. If I was a private company, I would deplatform him for such a statement. You can have your freedom of speech. You just can't have it on my platform. I would entertain such a guest, I would. And the fact that he's apologized, and I find it, he's doing the right thing. Okay, I'm not saying he should be barred forever now. I think there's a point where you have to be forgiven. Yes, I think he has to go through those steps. I'm not the guy to decide that. I haven't seen what he's done to be forgiven. I haven't seen him reach out to the Sandy Hook family. I don't know if the Sandy Hook family has forgiven him. I don't know if he's paid them. I don't know if he's given them reparations. I don't know anything of that. Okay, but I think there is a way to be forgiven if he can reach out to those people and make it right with them. I think he should be giving a platform to apologize, just so that if there's crazies out there that want to go and, they should hear it from their leader, that the leader is wrong. So because some people believe everything Alex Jones said. There are some people, if Alex Jones maintained this position, I think there are people who would still believe him. So I think it's so important that he publicly says, look, Sandy Hook was very real. Let's not make light of that situation. And I know a lot of you think deplatforming is wrong. Okay, that's your business. That's the topic for another day. Let's save that topic for another day. Okay, well, I'd love to debate you all on that topic, but just not today, because we're over time here. We're over 2 hours. Let's leave that topic for another day. Okay, but Alex Jones, I think he says a lot of intelligent things, but he says also a lot of things that are far-fetched and have no evidence. And that's how he gets his ratings. I think he's, he'll stretch the truth. Let's put it that way. That's the sweetest way, nicest way I could tell you. I don't think he believes a lot of the things he says. I think a lot of things he says are unfounded, ridiculous, absurd, and frankly, just ridiculous. So what if there's a breakaway civilization? So what if people want to break away and go and colonize Mars? And they're elitists. They're that smart. They're that scientific. They've built a spaceship. They have the total right to go and break away and start another civilization on Mars. Who are you to say, no, we got to stop them. We got to be part of that. We want to be part of the elite. Hey, if you want to be part of the elite, bring that team some value. Have a reason why they'd want to colonize with you. Give them a good reason. Be such a linchpin that they want to bring you along. Your talk with Joe on epistemology changed my outlook on life. So thank you. Unrelated, but I made GSP art and would like to know how to get it to you. Please, OZ, send it to the gym. Yes, we talked about epistemology. There's a lot of British empiricism. I think a lot of people just, are not used to being exposed to that level of criticism. But listen, British empiricism is held at the highest level of skepticism. It's just too much for most people. So I understand there was a lot of positive feedback and a lot of negative feedback. A lot of people were upset. And a lot of people were superly in love. I got a lot of positive, I would say 80% positive emails, like a lot of positive. Till this day, I get emails all the time about that podcast. But the thing is with British empiricism, doubting everything, there are both atheists and theists that practice this level of skepticism. And a lot of theists and mystics, okay, if you go to the level of mysticism, if you take religion and you bring it to the level of mysticism, which for me is the only acceptable level of religion. Like if you're an average Joe and that's the level you can understand, so be it. However, if you're capable of higher levels of skepticism and understanding, you must reach this level, or else it's, you did not, in my opinion, exhaust all the potential of your intellect. Because if you read the writings of mysticism leads absolute doubt, like Cartesian level doubt, like the craziest amount of skepticism leads to an experience of mysticism. And that's what people don't understand about mysticism, is that's really where how you get to that level. It's by doubting literally everything you've ever experienced. And you get to a duality between egocentric predicament and the hard problem of consciousness. And that's really what it's about. Now, I'm not going to get into this topic because it's way too much for this topic. Maybe one day we'll do a special on the egocentric predicament and versus the hard problem of consciousness, or mind and brain. One day we'll talk about mind and brain, and we'll see this duality in category, okay? In category only. So I'm pointing out to it only as a duality in category. But I don't want to mix Alex Jones with this very profound topic. So thank you very much for all of you who enjoyed that Joe Rogan podcast. I hope to be on it again soon, maybe in the summer. I hope to free up some time and go visit Joe. Okay, guys, I'm going to do one last one. I want to end it on something positive, something fun and positive. So let's go, guys. Shoot me your best one. Which book would you suggest to start on in philosophy? That's from Philip Kopilov. Philip, I'm going to end it up on this note. Try Descartes' Meditation on First Philosophy. Incredible book, okay? One day we'll do a whole video on this book. Great book, one of my favorite books. People always ask me, what book should I start with? I always recommend Descartes' First Philosophy. Read the book, read commentaries on the book, read lectures on the book. It's not an easy book to understand, but it's a great place to start. The second book I really like to recommend, which is a much easier read, is Euthyphro by Plato. Euthyphro by Plato. A must read. Okay, guys, with that, I'm signing off. Thank you all for supporting this channel. Go to jujiclub.com. Get yourself a mug, guys. Please support this channel. Let's get this channel rolling and exploding. And thank you all for tuning in. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Thank you.